Hello and welcome to the April 30th edition of the Bubb Report. This week, we go down memory lane with the organized labor movement in Grenada, as the Grenada Trades Union Council readies itself to celebrate another International Workers' Day with its counterparts around the world. This year's celebration is being held against the backdrop of the International Labour Organization's call for countries to reevaluate how they treat essential and casual workers. Also on the program, in recent weeks, the NDC administration in St. George's have been making attempts at enhancing the public facade of the Kirani James Boulevard and giving attention to the issue of unauthorized public vending on the streets of the town of St. George. These developments are also happening against the backdrop of government's intention to relocate the General Hospital and engage in facelift activities at Fort George, as well as at the site where the current hospital is located. We will assess these developments and ask to what extent are they the first signs of government's intention to implement elements of the Blue Growth Coastal Master Plan, touted by the previous administration. And later on our program, we do a post-mortem of the 2023 Carnival launch, which was held at the Grenada National Stadium with the CEO of the Spice Mass Corporation. We welcome our guests, Bert Patterson of the Grenada Trades Union Council, Dr. Angus Friday, Blue Economy Expert, Ambrose Phillip, former manager of the Grenada Ports Authority, Cecil Noel, CEO of the Grenada Spice Mass Corporation, Jimmy Bristol, Grenada's former Attorney General, and Andy Williams, Grenada's Minister for Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, with this week's editorial titled The Economics Behind Declining Enrollment at the St. George's University. We thank you for joining us. A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners. We do apologize as we will not have the editorial at the top of the program. But of course, before we get to our first guest today, we do wish to take this time to extend our deepest condolences to Senator the Honorable Nolan Cox on the passing of his beloved wife. Senator Cox has been a frequent and regular guest on the Bubb Report, and we do wish Senator Cox and his family the best at this time as they are experiencing this difficult bereavement. On behalf of the Bubb Report's team, we extend our deepest condolences to the Cox family and their children at this difficult time. And at this time, we wish to welcome our first guest for this week's program. He is Mr. Bert Patterson, who is the General Secretary of the Grenada Trades Union Council. Of course, tomorrow is what we call in Grenada May Day, but officially it is International Workers' Day. So as a trade unionist myself, I take this opportunity to extend best wishes to all of the workers of Grenada and the rest of the world as we all celebrate International Workers' Day. Solidarity forever. Mr. Bert Patterson, welcome to the Bubb Report, sir.
Thank you for having me. And it is nice that we can do this just one day before Labor Day, May Day, which is really the biggest day on our calendar.
Absolutely. It is indeed the biggest day on your calendar. Now, what we want to do before we go forward is to go down memory lane a little bit. Back to 2003, I actually captured some footage from 2003 Compliments Flow Grenada. And the backdrop of me sharing this footage is a conversation or a commitment that the current administration made upon winning the last election, that they want to see an era of industrial peace in the country. So once we tee up that footage, we will then reflect on where we are, how far we have come in respect of industrial relations in Grenada. So let us take a look at this.
Today is a most important day in the livelihood of workers all over the world. In particular, it is the most significant day for workers in our country. However,
some of them would like to suggest that it was the spontaneous reaction of the people. Not at all. I am quite certain that this was orchestrated, and I suspect by Chester Humphrey and Andre Lewis together. Derrick Allard, Andre Lewis, and Chester Humphrey were approached while this was going on. Neither of them made a move. All one of them had to do was to go to the microphone and say, please be quiet and give the minister a chance. But in fact, it is Chester's right hand, whatever you call him, pipsqueak, Andre Lewis, that started it all.
Mr. Patterson, I actually attended that May Day celebration at the time. That was back in 2003. I was an employee of the community channel 6 television. Do you remember that day? Do you recall that particular acrimonious Labor Day when, and of course, my former boss there, Leslie Pierre, said that it was your colleague, who he called a pipsqueak at the time, who was responsible for orchestrating that level of disrespect against the former Minister of Labor, Lawrence Joseph.
I remember the day. I was not at the that area because being a working day for us, we serve in different capacities, and I am not always able to attend the Labor Day rally or march. Mm-hmm. But these things do happen. I can say, I'm sorry, Mr. Pierre is not still alive, right? Because he would know that the treatment meted out to the minister then has in fact been meted out to some union leaders. So May Day is a time, and you may very well recall that we had incidents at Labor Day when union leaders got similar treatments. And that is actually, Labor Day is a day of protest. Mm-hmm. Call it what you want. It is a celebration of those who passed before us and who sacrificed for the conditions we have today, that we all enjoy today, not always remembered what's the reason for that. But Labor Day takes its own course. So, for example, Labor Day tends to reflect what is the industrial climate and political climate in the country. I won't leave out political, and yes. I must say that we are not shy to refer to the political issues and climate, because we are actually the persons, not in Grenada only, who created what we know as politics today. If you were to look at Britain, if you look at the rest of Europe, if you look at USA, it is the unions that led and won the fight for one man, one vote. So we take credit for that. So we can't stay out of it, right?
But it's also, if we look at the post-colonial experience in the Caribbean as well, it was the organized labor movement in the Caribbean who was responsible for, again, universal adult suffrage in many respects. So Eric Matthew Gary, who was, again, the President General of the Grenada Manual, Mental and Maritime Intellectual Workers Union at the time, skyredd that entire revolutionary period. Buzz Butler in Trinidad and Tobago, who was a Grenadian also. They're all heroes of the labor movement who also got in St. Vincent as well. Absolutely. So I tee that up, Mr. Patterson, against the backdrop of the current administration's commitment when Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell was sworn in last year, that he wants to usher in an era of industrial peace in Grenada. Would that ever be possible realistically, given the nature of the relationship between organized labor and government, and not only this government, but the way that the role that organized labor plays in society as always adversarial in many respects, advocating on behalf of their workers?
Well, one is never like to be pessimistic, and nothing is impossible, right? But it takes a lot of doing to have a situation of perfect peace between the labor movement and I would say the employers, because it is not only with the government of Grenada or the government, right? But I must say that the government, not being a very old government, has done several things that the past government would have refused to do. That would be the dock wages issue, abiding by the court ruling on pension, and that is, we're thankful for that. But there are several things that they have not done, right? Also, election promises. So we can't, you can't do one thing for us and we keep quiet. That is not our nature, right? We see the politicians as our servants. A lot of people see it a lot different to that. They see them as kings, or they see them as martyrs, or they see them as different things. But to us in the labor movement, we see them as our employers, right? And because they employ us and pay our workers. On the other hand, because of the political side, which is the elections, etc., we also see them as working for us, right? So it's a case where once they don't satisfy our needs and our wants, right? Even if I voted for you, right? When it gets to Mayday and on the street and at negotiation, you have to give me what I require, and it's just the nature of the game.
Let us talk about what the government has been adequate in respect of the relationship with you, and where do you feel as if they're coming up short? I know that, for example, issues around casual workers is one of those things that is still a sore point for the labor movement. But let us talk on balance, if you will, where they have met you, and in places where you're satisfied, and other areas where you're not satisfied.
Well, as I mentioned before, they would have completed the pension issue, which is an issue that has been going on since I think 1985 or so. And they have completed up to a point, because I'm still hearing that all is not completed, in that workers coming into the system may not be treated the same as workers who are presently there and workers who are going out, which is not what the court said, and not our views of what should be done. So that is a matter that is settled for the workers going back, but not for the workers going forward. So that is something that's incomplete. As I said, several other items, the dock pay of the workers who took strike action on the same pension matter, those workers would have been paid, and that's appreciated. There are several other little fires in the public sector area, be it TAMCC or the Industrial Development Corporation, and so that have been settled, right? And we do appreciate that, right? But as you mentioned, the major issue, which I would say would have been one of the biggest issues during the election and electioneering period, would have been the issue of what we like to refer to as precarious work. And regardless of if you have a contract for service, contract of service, casual, temporary, part-time, whatever that source, we may not have enough time, but this actually goes back to 1995. And I can say that the purpose it was created, in fact, was to attempt to get rid of the strength of the trade unions in the public sector. That was the actual purpose. It was created. It was created in the public sector, in breach of the law, I would say. And
Well, and I'm sure the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, would agree with you, because he said on the campaign trail that contract work is illegal.
he
And I'm sure
actually
that
said
is
it.
what the basis of his statement is founded in the idea of the unconstitutional nature of casual employment.
Well, I'm glad. I was glad to hear that, because let me say, and let me give the Prime Minister a little one here. I have been fighting with him on that issue and saying that for a long time. Myself and other unions have been saying that to him and others who represented at the time the private sector for a long time. And I was really pleased to hear him say that on the campaign trail. So, it sounds like somebody's agreeing with the trade union movement. And it is, in fact, we have been saying that for since 1985 or thereabout, or 95, sorry, or thereabout, that it is straight up illegal based on Section 29.5 of the Act. So I expect him and the government, let me say, to give us that major election promise. I also note that some sources believe that was one of the major issues, and the major issues that gave the present party the push to be elected in the majority and now form the government of the country. Because when we consider the amount of people that are workers that are in that position, the position of casual temporary contract when they shouldn't be, right? It is a sizable amount of the voting population. And I can only suspect that most of these persons may have voted for the present government as a result of their position that all workers would be made permanent.
Well, as you know, politicians say things during the election campaign that sometimes does not materialize when they get into government. When they get into government, it's another reality altogether. But
And it is our job and duty to hold them to it, in
absolutely,
particular the
well,
labor movement.
absolutely. Well, let's see what would unfold at May Day tomorrow. Speaking of May Day tomorrow, this will be the first May Day celebration that will be without the emergency powers, without Grenada being under a state of emergency as a result of COVID-19. So there are no restricted movements. There are no protocols that you have to follow. I'm sure you are expecting a bumper turnout in St. Andrew from the unions.
Yes, first of all, when we have maybe in the outer parishes, we tend to have a better turnout. People in particular, people in St. George love to go out to the I don't use the word country, into the outer parishes.
I happen to agree with you. I'm glad
Yes,
you said that. It's all one country. It's all one
yes.
country. Yes.
So it's not a proper statement, but to the outer parishes. And I would even love to go to Carriacou one of these years, but we have been attempting that, but there is still some resistance. But when we expecting a pretty large turnout, as you said correctly, although we were not restricted as far as numbers for last year's May Day celebrations, which were held in St. George, but the fact that people were still a little trembly, a little shaky about the fact that COVID was still pretty frightening. Now I am seeing that people are out and about even more than before, because I would have observed the launching of Carnival on Friday night, which might give an indication of what we might expect for Carnival celebrations. And I would expect that May Day, because in 2000 we had none, it was completely virtual. In 2021, I think we were allowed 20 or 25 members from each union. Last year, there was not that sort of restriction, but as I said, people were hesitant. So we expect a really large turnout on this occasion.
And what is the theme of this year's celebration? I know that sometimes you take a direction from the International Labor Organization, which sometimes sets the tone for what May Day celebrations around the world would reflect. What is the theme? What is the local theme of this year's May Day celebration? And I'm asking this question, Mr. Patterson, against the backdrop of so many changes in the labor environment. We are living in an era where artificial intelligence, really, if you think about it, is threatening job security for many workers. We're living in an environment where the labor market has evolved, and some have argued that workers are not evolving to meet these current issues of our time. What is the theme of this year's Labor Day celebration? And would it reflect a move towards your part on the labor movement in Grenada to have more innovation in respect of how workers treat to their work?
Well, the theme, and actually in our case, we do not follow an ILO sort of theme, right? We normally use the local situation generally and what affects us to decide on our theme for May Day. And this year it is promoting the goals of labor, enhancing workers' rights for security and equity. And that is a long outstanding fight. All right. We do have situations now where some things that we thought were sealed and agreed, we have had situations, in particular during the COVID period, which was a new situation, something that no one alive had met before. And we do have the situation, matters came up relating to vacation that didn't come up before, matters came up with vaccination that never came up before. And we did have a sort of awakening that we needed to ensure that those conditions we had prior remain, and that we now stay. So I would say that, for example, if you were to look at proposals for agreements that are to be amended, you will see things in there that you haven't seen before in relating to vaccination and related to retrenchment that did not have the issue of pandemics before, but now they do. On the second part of your question, the issues with AI and so, which is frightening to not only us, but it is a worldwide issue, and it is a threat to the working populations of the world, that either we have to learn to do something else, but AI is learning faster than us and learning to do all the things. In fact, the most recent news indicates that you're not now asking AI to do programming. It's programming things to make it easier for itself, right? Now, once you say itself, then probably it has already taken over. And I hope I'm not going too fast. But when you have systems that can program themselves for their convenience, right, our convenience becomes secondary. And that is frightening, which is why I think all the big IT companies would have last week or week before signed some letter indicating they're frightened. If they're frightened, we should be frightened. As to how we can change, okay, Grenada's, what we live by and live on, Grenada's economy. I've been hearing for a lot of years that we diversifying our economy. It has not happened, all right? In fact, it has regressed in that we use more imported stuff now than we used 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Once that happens, everyone cannot be employed in retail, neither import, right? And that means the sizable portions of our population that their lives would have been disrupted by the fall of agriculture, the fall of bananas, the fall of cocoa in the past, have most or all migrated. So our biggest export now might be migration or export of citizens, right? As to what we can do to make changes, there's not much we can do, but inform our workers, try to keep them as relevant as possible. And in fact, we do have training where we ask workers to learn as much as they could. For example, in the electricity services, I remember about 2 years ago when the issues of liberalizing the markets were the hot topic. All right, we did meet on several occasions with the workers, indicating to them that what they are presently comfortable with may not always be the case. So they should start themselves looking at alternative energy and what they as workers, not just the company, can do to ensure that if the industry changes drastically, that they are at least prepared so that whatever knowledge base they have now may be able to be utilized in a different form and a different format.
Two more issues before we get to a very star-studded panel segment today. One is negotiations. Now, we observed that the Grenada Union of Teachers, they went ahead and negotiated separately for salary increases and other fringe benefits. Normally, we understand that unions affiliated whose workers are associated with the public service, they tend to negotiate as a bargaining unit. Is there a reason why the GUT decided to negotiate on its own? And can you give us a status update in respect of your union, the workers that you represent within the ambits of the public service, when those negotiations would be complete?
Let me just correct you a little. For a
Yes.
significant amount of time, the last negotiations that would have been completely done with all units negotiating together, maybe way back in 1997, all right? Following that, the unions have negotiated separately, but have on most cases come up with the same outcome, all right? And I must say that I am glad to know that the teachers completed their negotiations. The teachers union completed their negotiations and got what they were satisfied with. I can report that what is on the table now would be very similar to what the teachers would have accepted. I can speak for Public Workers Union and TAO. I can also say that the uniform services, which is police, prisons, and so, are still on the table, and we are not yet satisfied with what is on the table. There is the discussion that what is on the table now may be higher than what would have been agreed in the last 3 or so negotiating cycles, and that is very true. But the thing that you have to also consider is that, and I always speak, I may be have a good memory of that because of my age, my advanced age, that the last time we had increases in goods and services, the way they have increased from 2000 to now would have been in 1974, following the riots and looting that took place during the independence period. Right? There has never been a period when prices would have increased in that way. I use the easiest thing, and because I'm a lover of jacks, I was frightened a couple of weeks ago to buy jacks for $8 a pound, right? Whereas it would have been $4 or $5 in 2000, right? And other local produce. So I'm not even going to, we know that imported products, which is the majority of what we use in the places we import from over the past 2 or 3 years, inflation has been in the region of 5 to 6%. And we know we must import that inflation. So I'm not too interested in what our stats department might say if it's 1% or 2% or 3%. I know that the things you and I buy, there would have been at least 6 to 8% increases in those, and that's the imported in inflation on invoicing, not on markup, all right? Because markup will probably be more. And for local produce, all right, in some cases that we have measured, there's been increases of 40, 50, and 60% of the general items we purchase at the market and other areas of local produce. So that being the case, we're looking for a little more. Let me say that we're still fighting for everybody, because the unions who are still on the table, it is a habit, I think, that the unions, even if they agree with the employer, which is the government of Grenada, they do sign into their agreements that if any other party gets more, they also receive it. So as far as I am concerned, we're still fighting for everybody. We are on the table, because if we get more, everybody else will get more, and we're still in that fight.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that you do a comparative analysis of rates of wage increase between unions. Is that what I'm hearing here? So you just said that based on what was offered, you tend to fight for more. Could you expand on what you meant by that?
Okay. I think it was reported that that the teachers union, for example,
yes,
accepted a particular wage increase, but they indicated, both themselves and the government, that there were significant fringe benefits that were gained. Right? I must say that, for example, in my union, we do not have any fringe benefits to gain or receive, because we are not, in fact, negotiating fringe benefits in this round. Right? Mm-hmm. Some of the other unions, so for example, some of the unions that might represent some agricultural workers who you still have with the government, and the public workers union, and so their fringe benefit negotiations have not, in some cases, commenced yet. Right? So they don't, although they may have made proposals, they have no idea what the government would have proposed. Right? So government has not made proposals yet on their fringe benefits. Mm-hmm. So you cannot negotiate blindly to say, okay, we will accept this based on the outcome of fringe benefits, which we are not yet on the table, or don't know yet what the government is proposing on fringe benefits. It may be to reduce fringe benefits, because there has been some talk on the table that some parties in the negotiating team for government believe that we already have too much fringe benefits. All right. Mm-hmm. So it would be foolhardy of us to say, okay, we're accepting this based on the outcome of fringe benefit negotiations, when we don't know what the outcome of that will be. So I hope that clears it up for you a little bit better, and for the public also. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. That's an important clarification there. We do have some comments, and I believe one of the viewers, Kizel Gilbert, she is asking a question that was on my mind here. What are the fringe benefits, and which workers are qualified for it?
Well, that is an interesting question. So, for example, in the services, you have, let us say, fringe benefits for transportation. Right? Mm-hmm. Very few public officers may have to use their personal transport to do government activities, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, when you get fringe benefits, and when you get increases in fringe benefits, right, then it is not everyone who gets that. It's individuals. If we were to compare, for example, the fringe benefits paid by the private sector employers compared to the fringe benefits by government. So, for example, very few workers in government have anything called a meal allowance, right? Mm-hmm. Which is commonplace in the private sector, right? And all those are things that we would like to get in, but as I say, that's not yet on the table, right? Okay. There are also fringe benefits relating to traveling, uniforms, additional pays to overtime. So, for example, call-out allowances. And I'm saying that you don't even hear of these in the private sector. Call-out allowances. There's some acting allowance issues that is not common again to the public sector. So all these allowances are what we refer to as fringe benefits. Generally, in a regular agreement, you would see 12 to 15 different fringe benefits. Again, most of which doesn't even exist in the public sector.
All
So I hope
right.
that answers the
Yes,
question.
absolutely. Let me see if George is asking, was there ever a time public workers got a better package than teachers? I'm not too sure if you can answer that. Was there ever a time?
From memory, there was one, I say, incident, right? When that occurred. It may have been in the early 200s or 2000s or late 90s, right? I don't think it was, because 1997, I think everyone negotiated together. It might have been very early so pre-Hurricane Ivan. From my memory, there was one occasion when that occurred.
We have another viewer question. What about workers who don't get fringe benefits at all, but continue to work alongside established staff? What happens to those workers who continue to pay union dues?
Well, the issue for me is not union dues, but the fact that you and I do the same function, and you get pension after 26 years. You get pension. I'm doing the same exact identical activity. All right, maybe paid less because I'm a so-called contract worker or some temporary worker or some other illegal form of employment, and you after your 26 years, you get your pension and I get nothing. That is what's unfair about it. So the issue of, in fact, the issues of dues is that the fact that in some cases they're asked to pay dues, it makes it easier on our argument that these are in fact workers of a permanent nature, right? Significant numbers of these workers do not pay dues, which is a downside. I wish they were paying dues, not that we don't represent them whether they pay dues or not, because as far as we're concerned, legally, they're part of the bargaining unit, right? So the dues is not an issue we speak to or even consider. The issue is they're not being treated in a way that is shows equity, or in fact, a way that is legal. That is the big issue for me.
All right, Mr. Patterson, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report. We want to respect our other guests' time. So
Just
as I said, yes.
Just allow
Go
me
ahead.
one short interlude here, just to indicate that the celebrations is being held in St. Andrew, as I said before. It starts at the St. Andrew bus terminus or the Grenada bus terminus, and it proceeds on to Progress Park. The time of starting is 9, and whether you have a T-shirt or not, you can march with us, and it's a time like Juve morning when you can very well say what you want. It's one of the few times when the lawyers are pretty much asleep on that day, so you can pretty well say and write whatever you want. So it is a day of full freedom. So, and thank you for having me on your program. And I hope whatever I would have conveyed would have been helpful to your listeners.
Absolutely. Mr. Patterson, thank you so much for agreeing to appear on the program today. Again, I would be very curious to see, as one of our viewers indicated, one of our viewers said that they're very curious to see what flyers, what placards would be on display this year, or if they. I want to see that what the union workers will carry on their placards about the administration, or if they will be hypocrites. So let's see with the changing of the guard if the placards will be the same, or if there might be changes. We await to see what would occur. So, Mr. Patterson, thank you so very much.
Thank you, and expect everything. We never succumb. Expect everything.
Absolutely. All right. That was Mr. Bud Patterson, who is the General Secretary of the Grenada Trades Union Council. Viewers and listeners, please stand by. We would now take a quick break before we get back with the panel segment of the day.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to the Bubb Report. Now, this week, what we want to do with our panel segment is to discuss ongoing developments around the Kirani James Boulevard with respect to beautifying the area and making it palatable and decent, but also have an overall conversation about urban renewal in the town of St. George. That has been a pressing issue, issues around sidewalk vending, issues around the state of the Fort George, and we now have indications that the government of Grenada would be attempting to relocate the general hospital from its current site. We are going to attempt to assess the extent to which all of these developments are part of what was called then the Blue Growth Master Plan for Grenada's coastal zones. And here to have this conversation with me, Mr. Ambrose Phillip, who is he's a maritime economist and former manager at the Grenada Ports Authority. Dr. Angus Friday, who is a blue economy expert who has written and presented extensively on issues around coastal and blue growth management. Mr. Jimmy Bristol, who appeared on the program before. He's Grenada's former Attorney General, but he has spoken extensively and with great passion around what issues currently face the town of St. George, especially with respect to traffic congestion, especially with respect to sidewalk vending, as I said before, especially with respect to the way that the town of St. George is expanding, and to the extent to which the town of St. George and the Lagoon Road area can actually meet the capacity of that expansion that is taking place. And our final guest today is Mr. Andy Williams, the Honorable Andy Williams, who is the Minister for Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation. This is Mr. Honorable Andy Williams's first time on the Bubb Report since winning his seat and since being sworn in as a minister. I do not believe I had the opportunity to congratulate Mr. Williams on his victory personally, but Mr. Williams, welcome to the report. Panelists, welcome to the report.
Thank you.
All of you. Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
You.
Absolutely. Now, I want to begin with you, Minister. Are you able to hear us, Andy? Honorable Williams? I'm not too sure if Mr. Williams can hear us there. But I want to begin, since while we're resolving those issues with Mr. Williams here, I want to begin with you, Dr. Friday and Mr. Bristol. I want you to react to what has been happening. A couple months ago, Brian Samuel was livid around what was happening in the Kirani James Boulevard area. He felt that area has become an eyesore. The sidewalk vending in the town of St. George as well, that has become an eyesore. I want you two gentlemen to react to what's happening in that area now. Angus, I'll begin with you.
Well, first of all, many thanks for having me here on the program, Dr. Bubb, and thanks for a lot of the great work you're doing in terms of keeping a lot of these issues alive and bringing them to the public's attention. Look, I think, it's important in Grenada that we give consideration to the way the environment looks, what happens on the side of the roads, how we zone, how people build, where they build, all of these things. So with respect to the lagoon, and I think cleaning that up, sometimes these things build up very slowly over time. But if you compare the number of boats we had in the 1980s in the lagoon to what we have now, it's increased several-fold. And it becomes a problem when you have derelict boats, for example, in the waters blocking the waterways and so on. So I very much applaud the work that's being done around the lagoon to get that cleaned up, and I'm sure it'll help our tourism product as well.
And Jimmy, I'm sure that's music to your ears as well, or to your eyes.
Indeed, and thank you again, and hello to the fellow panelists.
Yes.
I must say, on the Sunday I drove down to town, and when this cleanup had first taken place, I was so pleasantly surprised and heartened that the government, and I congratulate the government, had the guts to tackle these things, because they can be sensitive from the point of view of moving people, but because of politics. And that has been the bugbear in Grenada, is the lack of political will to deal with these issues, not just on the Kirani James Boulevard, but throughout the island. We have the desecration of Monroe's Beach, what's called BBC Beach, squatters in the corner, certain bars. Then you have, next to the aquarium on Pinkin Beach at Point Celine, you have a shack put up there. Then you have Grand Dance next to the Umbrellas restaurant, lots of shacks. Then you have next to the road, access road by where Riviera used to be, again, more shacks and so forth. And then you have the shacks, the vendors all over Grenada, not just in St. George's. And there must be the political will to enforce the law and ensure that these people are moved on and are not allowed to squat on the government or other property, so as to diminish the aesthetic value and the appearance of Grenada. Because what we have to sell is the beauty, and then we have to sell our people. That's what we really have. So it's important to do that, and it has to continue. I know there are challenges. For example, Angus mentioned the boats, and we know people want to pull their boats up as well. But I think the government should look at finding a place where people can pull up their boats, their fishing boats, especially the small ones that need to come up ever so often to be repaired, right? And you probably do that at Grand Mall by way of a suggestion. And the Port Authority is tasked with keeping the port clear. The lagoon is part of the port. And for vendors, the problem with the vendors setting up everywhere is because most of the people setting up, people migrate. A lot of people are migrating in from the countryside because of the demise in agriculture. And I think we need to find more economic centers in, for example, Grenville and in St. Patrick's. We need to find economic centers. And one economic center, I think we need to get moved out of St. George's, and which will have a tremendous effect on not only on St. George's, but on, let's say, Grenville, which is the only place one could put a harbor, is to move the commercial port up to Grenville. And something I looked into with engineers many years ago. So it's
Wouldn't
feasible.
that be a challenge, though? In you speaking of the Grenville Harbor there is a reef.
But
that's adjacent to the port.
You can dredge.
Okay.
Engineering. It's easier to dredge than to fill. So it's easier to deal with shallow water and create deep water than to deep water to create to create a breakwater, and, you know. So it's feasible. But if you in the photos you were showing at the beginning while we were waiting to come on of the concept for St. George's, yet another one, it showed it as a non-commercial port. We need to move the economic activity out of St. George, and of course the St. George is congested. You can't get in and out. The roads are
and in your previous appearances on the Bubb Report, you have you've spoken with such frustration over that issue around the congestion in the town.
And I mean, you know, there's been too much talk over the years. It's about the blue economy and all of this stuff. Why are we talking about blue economy? The day this was being bandied about in Grenada, I think before COVID, you know, the St. George's Harbour, inner harbour, was littered with bottles and plastic and everything floating down from the Rennick and Thompson corner towards Sales Restaurant, you know, and nobody looks at that. You know, nobody looks at that. But that's okay. We can ignore that. You know, we have to look at this holistically. Don't just pick a squatter somewhere and say, well, that's the problem. The problem is we need the will of the government to address these things. And we need citizens to stand up, because all of the years, Angus mentioned, is a gradual thing. No, it's not really a gradual thing. It's a constant refusal by Grenadians in the business community and otherwise to put pressure on to deal with these matters. Right? Everybody's kept quiet. In Germany, everybody kept quiet, and then the Holocaust came and said, "Oh, we didn't know about it." You know, I don't agree with that approach. Right? Either we are bold and we take bold steps, we talk about it, and we bring it to the fore. I mean, we encounter it head on. Otherwise, we're wasting our time.
Absolutely. Mr. Phillip, thank you so much, sir, for being patient with us. We do apologize for the misunderstanding, but you were the manager of the Grenada Ports Authority. As we understand, the Ports Authority does have jurisdiction and authority over the management of coastal management in some respect, especially in respect of vessels. Now, over the years, there has been challenges around in the Lagoon Road area with, you know, vessels being abandoned there. That still is a sticking point because, and we will get Minister Williams here. I hope Minister Williams can hear us now. Minister Williams, are you able to hear us? If you can just unmute.
Yes, I'm hearing you quite well.
Excellent, very well. So, and we will bring you in shortly. But let us talk about the role of the Ports Authority as an entity in enforcing best practices around the coast, not only in the Kirani James Boulevard area, but in other parts of the island in respect of, for example, if there is a derelict vessel in an area, a shipwreck, for example. What is the role of the Ports Authority in ensuring that best practices are maintained by the owners of those vessels?
All right, good morning to you. Good morning to all.
Yes.
Let me first of all say that while I might be able to indicate the legal powers of the authority, I cannot speak on behalf of the authority. I have
Absolutely.
no association.
We are aware of that.
No association with that entity at this point in time.
We do not want to get you into any legal trouble. No lawsuits.
Let me comment first of all on a couple of things that Mr. Bristol has said. The objective reality is that in life, entities like the Ports Authority are caught between a political conflict and a legal conflict. You have entities such as the Physical Planning Unit that will not do or cannot do what they are legally bound to do because of political interference in one way or the other. It might be a simple word from the minister. It may be an indication not to act. So we talk about sidewalk vending. We talk about people building structures where they should not be built. Well, what is the role of physical planning in that regard? You have a multi-million-dollar development and you wake up one morning and you see a container outside of it selling food. So you are caught between the political reality on the one hand and the economic reality of individuals. Individuals want to make a living. Look at what happened in Queens, in the Market Square, St. George's Market Square, and Queens Park. It must be close to 10 years now that provision was made for vendors to go to the stadium and sell on Fridays. Has it diminished on the street walk vending? No. The set of people who were moved from the sidewalk into Queens Park, a vacuum was created that was instantly filled by other people. So unless there is enforcement in that regard, we are not going to go anywhere. We could talk from now until doomsday about it. And we're not talking about sidewalk vending alone. Look at the fences going up to Beausejour and these places from Happy Hill, not Happy Hill, sorry. That First Hill, from Cherry Hill. From Cherry Hill, go right back. There are people constructing, having constructions on the revetments and the coastal protection that go up. Nobody does anything. That's the reality of it. With respect to, I have seen some work taking place in the lagoon. I honestly don't know what is happening there, so I can't comment on the merits or the merits of it. I really can't. But we have to face the conflict between what the politicians do and what legal entities are required to do and may not be able to do because they are subject to political direction. So that would be my comment in that regard. Let me also distinguish between the role of the port in the context of ownership and in the context of control. Section 21, I think it is, of the Ports Authority Act talks about its management of the four shores of the port. The four shores is that area of water, that area between the sea and the high water mark. So if you're talking about the port of St. George's, you're talking about from outside, I think it is Molinette, from outside Molinette Point right down to Point Saline, the four shores. In other words, the beaches are supposed to be under the control, not ownership, control of the authority. And you ought to obtain the authority's permission in respect of any development in those areas. So whether you are in well, not Clarkscourt Bay, what's that one? BBC Blanco Beach. Anyway, Blanco Beach, Grandlands, the Carenage, Melville Street, going up to Grand Mall and so on. You want to do something on the foreshore, on the beach, such as a jetty construction, the erection of buoys and anchors and stuff like that. You ought to be getting the Ports Authority permission. But then when you have the central government, which will override the authority and give permissions to favorite projects or preferred projects, what is the authority supposed to do? Carry the government to court? Can't do that. Just let us sit back and watch. And
then, because the authority would be taking itself to court. To a certain extent.
It just can't do that. I mean, I can recall the day when the then owner, the then legal representatives of Port Louis told me that they had rights to the foreshore of the Carenage. I asked them if they were going crazy, right? But that was the impression that they had obtained with their lease agreement with the then government. And when you perpetuate those kinds of things, you end up with problems. You look at the operations in the lagoon, for example. The legal operations in the lagoon, which are or used to be what is now Port Louis, which used to be GIS in the old days, Glean's Jetty, and the Yacht Club, and more latterly, the Foodland Jetty, and somebody else. I think there's one other legal person operating inside of it. The rest of them, as far as my memory goes, are illegal operations. If you look at those 4 or 5 arrangements that I'm talking about, they date back to 1961 and are signed off on by the then governor of Grenada. I think it was Bristol, I think it was Tubbott. What Tubbott was here, I can't recall. Right? So it tells you the extent to which the crown or the state exercise control of these areas. Today, stood by that, everybody do what they want. So maybe the minister could tell us what is supposed to be happening in the lagoon, because I don't know if it is an arrangement between himself and the Ports Authority, or if he is, as generally is the case with ministers, doing his own thing. He could tell us.
And Minister Williams, the Honorable Andy Williams, as I said, can you hear me, sir? I just want to make sure that you can hear us clearly.
Of course I can. I can hear everyone.
And welcome to the Bubb Report, sir. I thought you were avoiding us there for a second, but kudos to you for appearing on the program. You're not scared of the program.
I always said everything head on, never scared.
Well, all right. You also said in the campaign you can't stop 6 rounds.
No, right now it's 12. Right now it's 12, not
12 rounds. There you go. All right. You all right. Minister Williams, thank you. I'm sure you've been following this conversation here. A lot of observations were made by Angus Friday, Jimmy Ambrose. One of the major issues, one of the themes coming out of this conversation was a lack of political will by previous governments to really enforce best practices around the Kirani James Boulevard area and in the town of St. George generally. 2, conflicts in respect of the agencies who are responsible for enforcing best practices there, as against the political directorate, what the intention of the political directorate is. I just want you to comment on the conversations you have been hearing here against what you have been trying to do, sir, around cleaning up that area. Of course, in November, we had Brian Samuel who bemoaned what was happening at the lagoon, and I'm sure now he's very happy with what's taking place there. But over to you for some opening comments there.
Well, thank you for having me on the Bubb Report, and I want to say good morning to everyone, Mr. Philip, Mr. Bristol, and your audience, your guests, and so. And let me just say that, first of all, let's talk about the political will, because coming into government, what you have been hearing is that, we are seeing these places that are being degraded. Let me just say that. And no one has the will to really attack it head on and to deal with it. The Kirani James Boulevard, this was somewhere that was named after our own Kirani James, who is one of the world's most decorated 400-meter athlete. And when looking at the boulevard at first, I'm saying to myself, as a Grenadian, how can we feel comfortable and satisfied that we are naming this place after Kirani and we have it in such a state? When I literally walked on the boulevard, it was like a garbage heap. It had places where boats were just up, it was rotting. You had bushes just there banked up. You have garbage just there, and it was not looking good. It was not a nice sight. Also, we had people just going there and just squatting. And to add insult to injury, there was no water facility there, no toilet facilities. So when people have to stool and urinate, you can guess where they were doing it. And first of all, just a matter of national pride, I'm saying that has to stop. So on engaging the physical planning unit, the point of the politicians getting involved, that was one of the reasons why they say, Andy, you know what? Some of the time we want to act, but we are not prohibited, but we get, resistance from the politicians. They will go to break a shed, which someone just put up, without any permission. And while there, they will get a phone call saying, hey, stand down. So, it kind of compromises the physical planning unit. And again, if you have a unit and they cannot do their job properly, you'll find that they will be discouraged and they will not act in the way that they should act. So one of my aim was to really restore authority back to the unit, right? Let us get rid of the political interference and let the units do their job. Again, we have a project, a project. It's called the Visible Transformation Project. And it's a project where we look to beautify and to restore order back to our country. And part of it was to clean up the lagoon, to get rid of the the garbage, the old boats and everything, and to make the lagoon into a nice green space where the public can come and enjoy, you know, the whole, Grenada, basically. So that's why you will see us, or you saw us doing the cleanup. We tagged the boats, we informed the people with the boats, you know, and we did all of that. Now we have to go into the second step or the second stage. And the second stage is we have already engaged the Port Authority. And the second stage is we have to deal with the boats in the lagoon. If you look, there are boats that are sinking in the lagoon. There are boats that, you know, is just not a nice sight in the lagoon. And we have to start dealing with that. Also, not just the lagoon, but if you look in Woban, in Calais, in Chublu, you have people coming and dock outside there. And they are emptying their waste into the sea. Now think about what that will be doing to our coral, our reefs and so. It's not healthy, number one, and that will be destroying our reefs. So we have to address that head on, right? Now, so that's stage 2, but also we have to start educating our people as to how do we go forward and how do we cherish Grenada. So
now, yes. Before you proceed and stick a pin there, and you speak about giving, of course, authority to the physical planning unit and the Grenada Ports Authority and the other statutory bodies, Vector Control Division, I believe, in the Ministry of Health, all of the different agencies. I don't think it's Vector Control. I think, Solid Waste Management Authority, giving them the autonomy to perform as independently as they should. Now, Mr. Ambrose Phillip raised a question there about who owns that area, and some have expressed the concern, including civil society. In fact, we did invite civil society to appear on the program, but unfortunately, no one from civil society was able to make a representative available for the program today. But I'm going to go back to 2014 in a letter that Sandra Ferguson wrote, who is a member of the Citizens in Defense of Grenada's Lands and Heritage. She said in that letter, quote, as usual, Citizens in Defense of Grenada's Lands and Heritage continues to take a keen interest in the happenings of the company Campbell and Nicholson and Marine Investments, owners of the Port Louis Marina. We are particularly concerned about the protection of the lagoon shore to which the company lays claim, and the fact that the lagoon, a significant national asset, is under the control of the company. We continue to look for answers relating to the infamous original deed of release of October 5th, 2006, which is purported to have facilitated the transfer of the people's property to Ambassador de Savory's Port Louis for $1 EC, who then sold it to Camper Nicholson, but is not registered in the Deeds and Lands Registry of Grenada because, quote, it could not be found. And so, Minister, I'm going to ask you this: what is the truth in respect of private sector involvement in what is happening in the Lagoon Road? How much of your work that is being done on the Lagoon Road is influenced by Camper Nicholson?
So let me just say this.
Yeah,
I believe that government cannot do it alone. And I am someone who likes to get the private sector involved. Because when, not just the private sector, but when we get our people involved, we tend to cherish things more. And we have to move away from government doing it alone, and because Grenada belongs to all of us. So what part of my strategy of my way of doing things is to not just depend on government funds or government involvement, but to get everyone involved. And when you get everyone involved, you tend to develop a sense of national pride, where everyone will come out and look to really maintain our country and have it looking in the best possible way. We have to get that, because part of the transformation process has to deal with the mind, right? First of all, because we can do all the cleanup we want, and tomorrow it can get back to the same stage. So how do we get our people aware? How do we get our people, into the mindset of thinking, beautifying transformation? And what I did was that I reached out to Camper. I reached out to even the businesses on the lagoon, because they were the one that came to me and said, Andy, listen, just looking outside, it's an eyesore. And everyone were positive everyone, were really on board with me and with that project to clean the lagoon and have it maintained. And I have the support of the private sector fully. And that is the way we have to go forward in the future and from now on.
Except Mr. Williams, on the question of ownership, I'm not too sure if Jimmy, you want to add?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's clarify what
yes.
was read out earlier, just a moment
yes.
ago. I know as a fact, because I dealt with it, right? Talking about the foreshore forming the lagoon, from the entrance to Port Louis up to the Gleans Jetty, that strip, that belongs to Camper Nicholson. And it is in the Deeds and Land Registry, right? That's a fact. No, point one. Point two, the damage being done by way of squatting, etc., was not done by Camper Nicholson, and it was not done by foreigners. There seemed to be this xenophobia and this penchant to attack foreigners and this sort of nonsense, which is quite counter and unproductive. It's been done by us Grenadians. We're the ones squatting on the sea defenses. We're the ones squatting on Granada's beach. We're the ones in BBC Beach and Point Celine, as I mentioned before, on the sides of the roads. It's not no foreigners. These are the people who have invested hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Here, they can't take it and go. They've taken a risk. And the visitors who come here as a result of their investment wouldn't be very pleased to bring their multi-million-dollar yachts in and to see the mess that we Grenadians made. So why don't we criticize we Grenadians at some point? But we all seem to criticize outsiders. And that's very bad, The truth is, only that bit belongs to camp, apart from where the marina is, and the rest belongs to other people, and so forth.
So
right?
only that bit,
yes,
that
and to
bit
clarify
there.
now, the whole port thing. Let's just say this. So the port.
And
of St.
I'll bring in
George-
Ambrose here. Yes.
I'm just gonna I want to come back to Ambrose. The port of St. George and Ambrose was not correct, and I'm happy to see him, and he's still got that strong spirit, which he's renowned for. And great to see Ambrose.
He's one of my favorite guests on the Bubb Report, I have to say.
Brilliant gentleman. No, so the port is a straight line from Point Celine Point to Molyneux, all that water inshore of that. And as he said, the water. So the high water mark is where it ends. Now, the land along the lagoon is above the high water mark. So that land, okay, on the roadside to the sea, that land, because the high water mark doesn't come up above there, so it's lapping against the edge of that land. All that land belongs to the government except the camper bit from Gleans Jetty to the entrance to Port Louis. It's all government land, and except the bit with where the FedEx building is there. Okay.
Yes,
Ambrose. It all belongs.
Ambrose, you wanted to get a comment in here, and again, that was the lead into the concern that you raised in respect of the ownership of that area. Go ahead, Ambrose.
Well, first of all, I want to distinguish the quoted Sandra Ferguson article from what obtained in the lagoon. I don't know, Jimmy might help us here. I don't know if we remember a lady called Miss Frisbee. And there was one Miss Frisbee who single-handedly undertook the landscaping and practical day-to-day management of the cleanliness, the environments of the lagoon. And this is long before Camper Nicholson. I've heard, so we need to when that article that Sandra wrote had to do with the original GYS lease, the original GYS lease, which would have incorporated or may have incorporated part of the lands occupied by what was Ross Trading or Ross Iron Works or whatever it was. I have heard Jimmy talk about the some ownership by Camper Nicholson up to some part of the lagoon. I am not aware of that. Camper Nicholson effectively took over the GYS lease from 1961. And if it is correct that the Ports Authority exercises control or jurisdiction up to the high water mark. There is no land in the lagoon after the high water mark. Objectively, there may be the appearance of land there, no, because of the work which had been done from since Roy St. John days. Because remember, the lagoon was a mang. In fact, it used to be called a mang. It was a dump. It was a swamp. And it was by dumping stuff, the same stuff we dumping in Perseverance now, that used to be dumped in the lagoon to bring it to where it was. In fact, the lagoon did not become a road until after the airport had reached a substantial stage in its construction. And you began to move gravel from the red gravel heap in Queen's Park to Point Saline, that in fact the Lagoon Road or the Lagoon Highway was built up, and the Belmont Main Road as we know it died. That's what happened. So there is the question of ownership, and there is the question of management. And to the extent that government chooses to show an interest in a particular area, entities that are legally charged with jurisdiction in those areas, they are constrained. I can tell you of buildings that have appeared practically in the road because a minister has so directed or directed no action to be taken. These are the facts. Minister Andy has spoken about this particular project. What is the framework within which that has taken place? I mean, the truth of the matter is that everybody has good, well, not everybody, but some people have good intentions. But I believe in the saying that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So how has the minister decided that the lagoon, or this particular part of the lagoon in front of Patterson Tires or in front of Foodland, should be given priority to? How have they come up with that? Is it because of multi-million dots that are birthing in Port Louis? Are there other areas that need concern? There is talk about yachts throwing sewage and so on into the sea. How correct is this perception that a number of people have? We have to distinguish different kinds of yachts. There are the yachts that are occupying that area behind Clarkscourt Bay or between Clarkscourt Bay and Woburn, right? That is not Clarkscourt Bay itself, but it is part of Clarkscourt Bay, extending further south and southeastward, right? They are using as shelter in the hurricane season. How many of them are actually emptying sewage in the sea is debatable. And before we make statements like that, we need to examine the nature of the yachts there, because the vast majority, if not all yachts, are required to have holding tanks. And there are conventions that they have to comply with. So when we want to look at the behavior of yachts or what yachts do, we need to engage MIAG. That's Jason and Laura Fletcher and company, who have been practically the voices of the yachting community. But we have to weigh that against the multi-million-dollar yachts you see parked up in Port Louis. It is a different kind. It is a different kind of business. It's a different kind of trade. When you see a yacht anchored off that piece, that piece of road before you come up to, talking about going to Guelph, that stretch, what is the name of it? Palmis. Stretch. When you see yachts anchored out there, or you see them in Black Bay, or you see them in Grand Roy, or whatever it is, you think that those yachts end up there by accident? Ask the customs and ask the immigration authorities how those yachts reach there. And if they're not supposed to be there, why are we not moving them? Why are we not moving them? Those yachts generally have to get permission from the customs in the first instance, and maybe to a second extent from the immigration, to be able to anchor in those areas. And the kinds of actions that we sometimes associate with yachts, it is not always the case, and we should not make those kinds of statements without having done the work.
Go ahead if you wanted to add one more quick point, and then I'll get the minister.
The next part of your presentation is supposed to, your program is supposed to deal with the blue growth economy and all the rest of it.
Correct, right? and that's why we have Angus here.
And we can't go down that road without the necessary infrastructure right? And attitude and so on in place to deal with it. You can't do it. But enough for now.
Minister Williams, you've heard what Mr. Philip here, the ownership again of the Lagoon Road area in terms of the leaseholding. But what I also hear Mr. Philip saying here is that in many respects, the expansion of the lagoon has been so significant that enforcement measures have not met up with that expansion. I believe that is Mr. Philip's theory of the case here. So let's deal with one thing at a time. Let us talk about, again, you said previously private sector involvement, public-private partnership involvement in respect of cleaning up of the lagoon is what you are engaging with. But to what extent is the private sector driving this? Is it their prerogative, or is it really your government's intention to work with the private sector in respect of that approach?
So let me just say this, right? In November 2021, you had the private sector giving letters to people on the lagoon. That's, I think, was Camper was giving letters to the people on the lagoon. That's where they had the boats and so, through the lawyer, the letters and so. And the instruction was they were giving them time to move some of the stuff, especially in that area that by Port Louis across, you go back to Green's garage. Sorry, to Green's automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And up until last year, nothing was done. Now, everything that I'm doing is part of the Visible Transformation Project. And there is nothing driving this than my government will. And in doing so, we have to get the private sector on board. So yes, I engage everyone. And it is not just by the campus side to say it's a big short area or so. No, it's everywhere. If you look, you will see by the Soupmaster building, we went, we spoke to the gentleman, we sat down with the gentleman, he saw the vision, and he agreed. Together with, I forgot it, Mr. DeGale, again, we sat, right? And we discussed what the vision of the lagoon should be. And they all bought into it, and that is where, this whole thing is singing. So this is not about trying to please somebody. This is about national pride. And anyone who knows me knows that, listen, I am not in this favoritism stuff. We are all Grenadians. We all want to see our country looking better. When we go to places like the Bahamas and so, and we see it looking lovely, we should want the same for Grenada. So it's nothing about any private sector driving this.
But Mr. Williams, you're still not answering the question about the ownership. The ownership, I believe, is one of the sticking points in that area. Who owns that the entire lagoon? I think that's the question civil society raised, and that's the question that Ambrose Philip is raising here. Is Camper Nicholson driving this urban renewal effort in that area, that entire area?
The answer is no. The answer is this. This is part of the Visible Transformation Project. Let me repeat it, right? Now, let me just tell you that I have not even, I think someone posted once about a plan that Camper had for the area. I did not even have seen that report and so. I've never even gone into it in details. I've only saw someone posted it, and that was it. But this is, again, see, let me just repeat this, because I don't want people to go away thinking that anyone is driving this. This is our government as part of the transformation process. We are driving this. And it's all about, again, back to national pride. And we have to have that. So this project, number one, will seem to really restore the lagoon in its full sense. And let me just tell you this to the nation and to your guests and to the host on this show here, right? That garbage is garbage. Beautifying is beautifying. There's no trick in it. This is not complicated. And everyone, I went to one of the companies there, and the gentleman looked from his window and said, Andy, look at this. It's a nightmare or it's an eyesore to look at. And I'm saying that in itself is enough to say, let's start to do something about it. Let me proceed. You have people who send videos to me of stool being washed up on the shores. So when I'm making these statements, I'm not just making these statements because I want to make these statements. It's actually happening, and it's something that we have to deal with. We have to. And I'm saying, if the previous administration did not have the guts to deal with it, we will deal with it. Because if we're talking about climate resilience and all these things, we cannot be talking about these things and turning a blind eye to that. And this is our stance on it. And we as a government will ensure that we have the guts to deal with these things, to make Grenada a better place, a cleaner place. So this is strictly being driven by this government and this ministry. And what we did again is that we involve all ministry in this process. So our visible transformation project has a representative from climate resilience, infrastructure, tourism, just name it, health, right? And it is not just about the lagoon. It is not just about the sea and that area, but it also extends to the relic, to our tourism sites, right? Through the length and breadth of Grenada. This is what we want to do. So there's no thing about any private sector driving anything. We are the ones that are driving it. And that is the way we want to proceed going forward. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. We would attempt also to reach out to the investors at Camper Nicholson to get their input in the interest of balance and in the interest of accommodating all perspectives. But Mr. Willis, before we continue with the panel, and then we would shift gears a little bit to talk about the overall blue economy approach to Grenada's development moving forward. And that's why we invited Angus here. But you said that you consulted with most of the people who operate on the Lagoon Road, including the vendors, and of course you indicated, I believe, in an interview on another network that you actually are adamant in ensuring that the sidewalk vending that we see, it has to go. Good luck on that. Previous administrations have attempted to do that. We saw how that turned out, but that is indeed one of the issues there that people are concerned about. But the Independent Caucus on Constitutional Reform, they indicated that they've heard from fishermen in the area that the fishermen have expressed concern, but that fishermen are a bit apprehensive of speaking publicly in respect of their relocation. What conversations have you had with the fishermen in the area? Because some of these fishermen have been there for a long time. And of course, as part of this trust, they may be displaced as a result of that. What conversations have you had with these fishermen, and how does that square up against what the concerns that some in civil society have been raising? Well,
if you notice, or anyone notice that I'm someone who, I'm very hands-on. So one thing you will not see me doing is hiding behind the scenes while something is going on, or this project is taking place. So I was on the ground mostly every week on every operations to ensure that we explain, any concerns, and so that anyone had. And even some of the fishermen, we granted them time. Some of the boats and so that was on the lagoon, they were leaking, and they wanted some time to really, to really deal with it, solve it, and then to get it back into the water again. And we gave them the time, whatever time they wanted, we spoke to them, and we are very accommodating in that sense. Yeah, and let me just say that up until December 2022 was the last day that we gave for all the boats to be back into the water. And we extended the time up until February of this year. And some people did not, or some fishermen still needed more time, and we still gave them more time to ensure that they were well taken care of, or the boat were taken care of before they put it back into the water. So it was a conversation that we were having while the project was taking place, and that is the way we do things, because we understand that, everything is not set in stone, and there are times when you have to compromise for the good. And we appreciate the fact that fishermen are really, listen, they may have the case where the boat is on the lagoon and is rotting and so, but at the end of the day, these gentlemen are really looking to make a living, and we are for that. So throughout the duration of the project, I was there with them. We were talking about their concerns, everything, and up to today, right? Even if one come and say, I need tomorrow, listen, I have an issue, and I want to pull back up my boat to do something, it's no problem. That's how, that's how lenient we are in this. But let me just speak about the market, because I realize that everyone, they are scared to touch the market. But what about the people who are actually in the market? They are hurting because they are paying their dues to be in the market. There are people on the outside who are selling, paying nothing, and they are reaping all the benefits. And the people in the market are there selling, and no one is coming to them because everyone is meeting them on the sidewalks, and they are earning more sales than them. So I'm saying what we have to do is to get everyone in the market. But again, we have to ensure that the infrastructure in the market is up to date and it's feasible, right? And create the atmosphere so that people will want to come into the market to buy. And if we put everyone back into the market, then the crowd that were actually on the streets, on the sidewalks purchasing will come into the market, because that's where everyone is or will be located. And then you can see the market making more sense. But we cannot allow this to continue again, because you have people walking on the sidewalks and you're actually bouncing people. You're bouncing on their goods. And what about if there's an emergency or something in town? What happens, right? So yes, we are for people earning $1, and we can understand why they went out in the first place, but we have to start restoring order in Grenada. And if it means having the will to do it, yes, we have the will to do it, and it will be done in a short.
Well, you did say in a town hall meeting that you're going to be taking courageous decisions very early in your administration. Of course, the panelists here indicated that that's one of the things politicians in the past have been fearful to do. So let us see how that will turn out. Of course, in the interest of political expediency, you tell physical planning units and you tell other people not to do things. But let's watch this space.
Good,
Mr. Williams.
Good, and let me tell you that in the past, politicians, they were saying that they will correct the Kirani James Boulevard, that issue, and no one did it. And today, you can see it being corrected. So I'm saying our word is our bond. And if we say we're going to do it, we are going to do it. And it will be done in a short time. So it's going to be a long time. We'll say probably next 5 months. And you know what? You said that you're going to do this and it was not done. You will see it being done.
All right. Panelists, we want to take a quick break. We are going to come up for air. This has been a very interesting conversation. I learned a lot from all of you here. And this is what we try to do here to educate and inform. And so what we want to do, we'll take a quick break, and then we will come back to talk about the expansion of the town of St. George, to talk about it in the context of the Blue Growth Economy Plan, which is, of course, under UN Sustainable Development Goals. So please stand by.
Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Payne, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Payne? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man.
May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop it. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. Who've always aspired to do better. Who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews. But yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
And if you're not careful with how and what you say on radio, you will cause people to fight here.
I thrive on that controversy. Some people hate it, but I love it. In other words, every time something goes viral, it's about Kem Jones.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. And it's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say, we want to win an election, so let's come together.
And welcome back, viewers and listeners. And of course, there are lots of questions and comments coming in, but we want to tee off this segment with Dr. Angus Friday. He is, I would say, one of the preeminent experts on blue growth economy development. And I'm going to share my screen here again, because I do want to give viewers and listeners some additional context. We hear about blue economy, we hear about blue growth, but it's important that we really contextualize what that means for our viewers. Now, this report was published, I believe, and of course, Angus can correct me, many years ago. But again, what is the blue growth vision? The blue growth vision, according to this document here, because it says, quote, because of their outward-looking geography, ports and coastal communities are important resources for developing new ideas and innovation. This has opened up an opportunity for blue growth, an initiative to harness the untapped potential of Grenada's oceans and coasts for jobs and economic growth. The potential is significant, provided the appropriate investments are made. And in this document, we do see what are some of the coastal zone management issues that have been identified in the context of Grenada. But the document also talks and visions what could be possible in respect of marine tourism, marine leisure, marine services, marine businesses. And it goes on with a number of variables here that could inform the blue growth economy. Let me go on to finally, before I bring you in here, it talks about current investment projects that sort of encapsulates this blue growth economy. So, Angus, I want to let us talk about the blue growth and what that is about in the context of Grenada's continued expansion.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that there's an ocean economy and that there's a blue economy. When we're talking about the blue economy, we're really talking about sustainability first and foremost. So I think it's very important for people to understand that. OECD predicts that the ocean economy will reach approximately 3 trillion by the year 2030. And that that's a doubling basically of the industries. But 70% of the ocean economy basically relies on a healthy ocean. So whatever we do in terms of blue growth and blue economy, it's very important to remember that the natural capital, the fish, the corals, the natural environment is absolutely important to that. Now, the context for this particular document came about when unemployment was particularly high in Grenada. And it came about at the time also when the blue economy and blue growth was sort of gaining in momentum at the United Nations, at the World Bank and other places. And there was a lot of international support for this idea, including the support that Grenada received from the Dutch government to do this work. So, the impetus for this was twofold. One is, how does Grenada harness the sort of international movement on blue economy? And two, how does Grenada do that in such a way that can attract investment, generate jobs, while also building sustainability? Now, this document was meant, this is not some sort of formal plan that Grenada adopted. While it was published by the World Bank, as a World Bank document, the World Bank actually adopted it. But this was really meant as a conversation start. And if you look at the very front of the of the document, it says so. This is actually meant to, as a start for, I think if you go down a little bit, down further, yes, I think right in there, it talks about this document actually, requiring further consultations and so forth. So I think that's an important context to set. And, earlier on in the conversation, we've been talking about urbanization, for example, the fact that so many people are moving into St. George's and all the problems that this creates. It's important to remember that globally, urbanization has grown tremendously. So 56% of the world's population now live in urban centers. So you have here in Grenada a lot of people moving more and more to the urban center for economic growth. But it's important to realize that we do have some agency. We have some agency in saying, let's look, from Pidi Martinique to Point Saline. Let us look at that space and decide what are the poles of growth that we can have? What are some of the things that are already happening there that would allow us to create economic development, attract investment, get jobs going in those areas, while we also address, things happening, in the sea from the perspective of, natural capital and so forth. So, for example, in Carriacou and Pidi Martinique, we made a number of recommendations there for, for the wooden boat industry, the Carriacou boats. That's actually something that's quite unique and something that's dying if you saw the film Vanishing Sails. But it's something for which there is some global demand. So how do we create more of an industry out of that so that you can get more jobs happening there? In Guave is considered the fisheries capital for Grenada. Why not have a sustainable fisheries hub based in Guave, for example, which would have, a bigger fisheries port, massive fisheries processing center, training for sustainable fisheries, production of boats for the fisheries sector, and so on. So we looked at all of these things. Mr. Bristol mentioned early on the idea of Grenville and having a shipping port in Grenville. That was one of the options looked at as well as Beauchejou and Halifax. But obviously, and the idea was to put some of these ideas out, get feedback, and then take it on to the next level. So this was never really put out as some sort of a final document for adoption, but rather a set of options for consideration with investments, of about $1 billion or so to make some of these things happen.
Absolutely. So let me bring in the other panelists here. Jimmy, if having read that proposed Blue Growth Master Plan, especially in respect of the town of St. George, if I had not known, I would have thought that you actually wrote it because you've been such a huge advocate for urban renewal in the town of St. George and revitalizing the area. You talk about the congestion that happens there. You even mention emergency services. Sometimes it's very difficult for the ambulance to get to the hospital because of the traffic. So many issues. I want to get your take on the proposed Blue Growth Master Plan. Is it feasible? Is it realistic for St. George's in particular?
Everything is realistic, if you have the will to do it, as Ambrose said. Okay? Grenada's had 1,000,001 master plans, but they're all gathering dust somewhere. All right? Because we don't really want to implement it. In the last 30 years, if we're serious, and I'm going to give you two things about preserving what we have, our heritage, for example. More of our heritage buildings in St. George's have been demolished. Yeah, and Fort George, there was a plan after the intervention in '83 to enhance the Carnival. They started on it, and once the Americans were out of the picture, it just fell apart. Secondly, and I'll come back to Angus. Just take up a thing, a very important. Yes. In 2008, 2009, UNESCO was prepared to consider, I know because I was involved, a World Heritage status for the town of St. George, but that's gone now because we've destroyed it. okay, and the then cabinet, when I made a presentation and a plea to preserve Government House and all that, as according to the architects, and as part of the thing, and the area as a residential area, which it was, they said, no, well, priority is a Parliament building. So we slowly, and if we disregard destroying our heritage and the beauty around the area, getting back to the plan, I can say this, it's a plan, and it's nothing more than a plan, and it will remain a plan. Right now, we have protected zones, fisheries zones, and so forth around the island, but they're not policed. Yeah, they're not policed. Molyneux, most of the boys you have for anchoring when you go, visiting, and you don't want to destroy the reef, so you could snorkel and see the statues. Most of them are gone, right? Are we serious? We are destroying the mangrove. In the whole world, people are preserving mangrove because that's where your fish come from. We destroyed all the mangrove in Hardy Bay at the airport. They're still destroying it. We're destroying all the mangrove in Secret Harbor Bay there, in Oban, etc., etc., etc. Right? We're not serious. We're destroying the mangrove in Turtle Bay and Carriacou. Are we serious? That's my whole point, Yes, we can talk, but I think there's too much talk, right? Because right now, without having to wait for the implementation of any master blue plan, right? There are laws in place, as Ambrose said, which we can enforce, but we're just not doing it because up to now, and I'm ready, I take my hats off to the present regime for taking the bold steps, as Minister Williams said, and they're bold because, this should be congratulated, and to continue to do so, encourage them to continue to do so, to put measures in place to monitor our oceans, our territorial waters, for the protection of the reefs, which where we get our fish from. It's all part of the ecological framework, etc. In Carriacou, Sandy Island is another protected area. Yeah. So the fish came back. The parrotfish all came back. I used to sail up there all the time, I'm telling you. So much so that the ground shark, the nurse sharks came back and were feeding right against the beach. No sooner than the fish life was restored, the fishermen from Paradise Beach zoom across in their boats with their spear guns, because the fish are sitting ducks, and shoot out all the fish. Yeah, but we're not monitoring that. And we're supposed to have the people in the boats monitoring, but the boat probably don't have gas, they don't have anything, people aren't getting a salary, etc., etc., etc. So there are things we can be doing right now. The Ministry of Tourism cut down rainforests at 1910 on Grenada to make a viewing platform. They didn't have to do that. Yeah? I left all the garbage down below. And when I mentioned it to one of them, they get vexed because, I caught them out. Up on Mount St. Catherine, the tenants there, because I went up there years ago, when they put new electronic equipment, which is huge stuff, they take all the boxes, all the packing, and they throw them in the rainforest below. When I mentioned that to tourism, they said they did nothing. Mount Hartman is the next Perseverance. When I mentioned it to the government in 2017, they didn't say a word. I took photos, I sent it to them. You go there now, it is Perseverance Part 2. Are we serious, is my point, right? We could talk about these plans, but we are yet not using the tools that we have at the moment. So I really am very skeptical. I'm not saying don't do it, and I applaud people who are involved like Angus and so forth, but why don't we work and we can deal with things right now while we're waiting for the master plan to come into effect? Okay, thank you.
Ambrose, are we serious? It's not about having these grand plans and grand visions, but it's about, again, as the lack of political will, the lack of proper enforcement. But even in the place of political will being used in a way that is not supposed to be used, if that makes sense. Go ahead, Ambrose.
Well, the truth of the matter is everything that Jimmy has said there, I could simply say ditto and say no more. That is absolutely correct. Let us look at the economy. Let us look at Grenada's economy over the past 50 plus years. There has only been one attempt to transform the economy from the days of sugarcane. And the days of sugarcane effectively ended with Hurricane Janet and the introduction of bananas and, to a lesser extent, cocoa and nutmeg. After that, The only other attempt made to transform the economy, to make it more relevant to the citizens of the economy, the only other attempt was during the times of the PRG. And that experiment, unfortunately, only lasted, and when I say unfortunately, it tells you exactly where I stand and which side I was on, only lasted for 4.5 years. And even then, I don't know if at the time what was being attempted was the correct thing, because we were talking at that time more about a political economy than the naked economics of people's livelihoods. Since then, things have happened to us. All that you see happening in construction, all that you see happening in tourism, all that you see with new stadium, new House of Parliament, and all the rest of it, these things have happened. Effectively and objectively, they were not planned. There has been no planned attempt to transform the economy to meet the demands of the current citizens in this economy. That is the objective reality. And what the Blue Growth, and this Blue Growth document, in fact, was prepared somewhere around 2016 or so, you would see that while the Ports Authority was consulted on it, you may ask, what does consultation mean? So
I find consultation to be a box-checking exercise, quite frankly, sometimes.
So I will not tell you that the port endorsed or did not endorse this particular document. Mm-hmm. And as Jimmy said, I don't know if I'll call it a plan, but I certainly will call it an initiative. But what it does attempt to do is to indicate areas in which we can develop new activity which will provide livelihoods, jobs, and activity for people. In other words, people who have been displaced out of the rural economy, and as somebody said, they continue to flock to the St. George's area. They flock to the St. George's area because that is where the economics is now. The St. George's area has benefited from two principal things in the past 30 or so years. One, SGU. Two is the question of the general expansion in South St. George, right, which has in fact been centered around the SGU itself. And thirdly, the question of tourism activity, whether it is cruise tourism or hotel tourism, again, all centered in the South. And objectively, there's nothing happening in the rest of the country. And this is what the Blue Economy Initiative attempts to show, where it is that capitalizing on our coastal zone resources, and coastal zone is defined in the document, or where it is that our coastal zone resources can be encouraged, can be developed, whether by way of incentives, whether it is by way of initiatives to provide jobs and livelihoods for people. So actually, this document is capable of having transformational potential. It has transformational potential in the context of moving the economy from where it is now, and it is practically nowhere, to somewhere that might make sense in the future. There are a number of initiatives shown there. I can't tell you that I agree with A or B. There are things that I believe do call for further investigation. There is the notion of moving the port to Grenville, for example. The question of moving the port from St. George's has been in the air since the 1980s. At one point in time, there was talk about moving the port from Carnage to Melville Street. There were considerations of Clark's Court Bay, Halifax Bay, Beausejour, and Grenville. Somebody made a reference to that rock in Grenville. One of the issues with Grenville is...
But it's also under sea level, yeah?
The sea level is not a significant issue. The whole of Holland is under sea level, and people still live in there. So that's not an issue. Okay. There is your principal issue with Grenville. It is the only possible site which is on the Atlantic side. All the other sites are practically on the Caribbean side, and that has implication for currents, for weather, and all the rest of it. Clark's Court Bay at one point had emerged as one of the leading options. The principal constraint to Clark's Court Bay, if my memory serves me correct, may have been the cost of the land acquisition of bordering areas to where the port would have been, in addition to which you would have had to do some significant reclamation to create the land space that you would have needed for the port there. You don't have that problem in Grenville, because if you are looking to the north of Marquis Rock, you're easily getting 40 to 50 acres there that you can do anything with. So the initiative does point in that direction. In fact, if you have been to Grenville within the past few months, you have seen that there have been certain activities in the, not telescope, the other ones, in the Soubise area, and it begins to wonder, you begin to wonder if there are people there who know something that the rest of us don't know. You look at the Caranage, and your emphasis appears to want to be to the initiatives which are proposed for St. George's. I have no difficulty with this stuff about relocating the hospital. This has been in the air for the longest while. I am saddened to think, however, that people who obtained the lands being considered now for a song are probably going to make a windfall if the current proposals I'm hearing about are in fact realized, because I believe the lands being contemplated are at one point in time did belong to something called the Grenada Sugar Factory, or some of us call it the Woodland Sugar Factory. I believe that government at one point in time owned significant shares. I believe that the current shareholders got that land practically for a song, and it would be a travesty of justice that they were able to sell it back at a mint for any development concerning hospital in that particular area. The question of the road around the rocks, the hospital rocks, that is, absolute waste of time. As far as I'm concerned, it does not solve traffic problems in St. George's. It is just dumping Melville Street traffic onto Caranage traffic, and the two of them are already meeting under the tunnel. So I don't know where we are going with that. If we're talking about creating a new route to the hospital, it does not solve the problem, because your problem, in fact, in the Melville Street area is that you have traffic coming from the central part of the island and the western part of the island converging on Melville Street. In fact, it is one of the issues that I know the Ports Authority had when the bus terminus was just starting up. And the powers that be just could not understand that there is a distinction between mass commuting and private commuting. In other words, if you are not prepared to give priority to mass transit, then it's joking. Melville Street, as far as I'm concerned, should be closed from the Keep Left, closed to private traffic from Keep Left, come right down to, that is Granby Street. And this is during rush hour, where you allow the buses coming from the central corridor and coming from the west coast to use that Keep Left down to the bus terminus, and you divert the traffic either over Cemetery Hill or through Tempe to go to St. Paul's, to Grandance, and all the rest of it, right? That will make a big difference. But the powers that be don't see it that way. It is probably more important that bank clerks with cars get to their jobs than people who do not have cars be able to access the terminus to get to their different jobs. So the road around the rocks, as far as I'm concerned, is not going to solve or ameliorate any traffic issue within the town of St. George. The initiative regarding the Caranage, many people don't know it, but the Caranage is actually an eggshell. When you're driving on the Caranage, similar to some parts of the West Coast, you are driving on an eggshell. Below what appears to be the road is water. In other words, the Caranage seawall has gone. However, if the Caranage seawall is prepared, and this will be a major initiative and will have to be done one day. Jump high, jump low, I probably won't be alive. It will have to be done one day, because you have water from what used to be outside of Rudolph's coming right back to what used to be the Empire Cinema. There is water under that roadway there. If you refurbish that Caranage seawall, the question of using the Caranage as a luxury yacht center, which I believe is advocated within that Blue Boat initiative by Dr. Friday, is a realistic proposition, right? There have been people who tell you that what makes the Carnage particularly scenic is the entrance to the Carnage from the ocean, where as you come into the Carnage, the scene is virtually like a curtain being drawn open. And if people love it so much, then they should be prepared to pay a premium price to park their mega yachts or their yachts in the Carnage area. Of course, with such an initiative, the port is going to have to go somewhere else, where else is probably not particularly important if you can afford it. And I can go on, but that is probably enough at this point.
That was so refreshing. Jimmy, I want to, I see you have been nodding there.
No, I'm going to reciprocate by giving Ambrose a ditto. but I just like to add one thing to my ditto.
Yes.
Is that with the hospital in 2008, 2009, the hospital plan, the funding was in. I'm talking, I was Attorney General, right? Yes. The funding was there. It was going to be run by Canada Health. I think the funding was from IFC, an international funding by UN type agency or something, one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And the only bugbear, the sticking point, we couldn't get a site. And the site, no mention, was being investigated when the government changed, right? And the new government just blanked the whole project. And I did to him on the cost of that land as well. Thank you, Ambrose.
Let's expand on the cost of that land, because you're saying that they received it as, I suppose, at a subprime rate, shall we call it that, and now they're selling it at a mint. Yeah.
No, I don't know what the price is. You know, ask the two Mitchells.
The two Mitchells. Well, of course, if one Mitchell makes himself available on the Bubb Report, the other, I'm not too sure why he does not want to come on the Bubb Report, but if he does, I'll ask him what that. But let us talk about the relocation of the hospital, and I'm going to bring Angus in for this part of the conversation, as well as Minister Williams here. The relocation of the hospital. Let us talk about that. Angus, what impact do you see that having in respect of reducing congestion, but also in respect of where it will be relocated? Some have expressed concerns that area is not centrally situated for a hospital facility, that it's not located in a central part of the country, so that it might be difficult for people to get to. Angus, your thoughts on that idea?
Sure. No, look, I think before we talk about where the hospital is located, it's really important to think about the bigger opportunity here. Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about how important SGU is to the development of the south of Grenada. In fact, SGU, depending on who you read, represents about 20% of Grenada's GDP. I mean, that's significant. Something even more important is that SGU is responsible for 1 in every 100 doctors practicing in the United States. It is, in fact, the largest single source of doctors practicing in the United States. But we do not consider doctors to be an export that we have, but in fact it is. And over the years, many Grenadian doctors have been trained. A lot of them are working, abroad. People have gone through SGU and so on. So we need to think about healthcare. Yes, we need to provide excellent healthcare for our people, but we also need to think about it as an export opportunity, be it in terms of medical education, medical tourism, goods and services that can be produced here in Grenada related to the medical field. Because if you take something like Silicon Valley, for example, which is you have the entire IT industry has come out of Silicon Valley. That is has developed around Stanford University and has developed around a lot of the work that NASA did and so on. So it's academia, government investment coming in and private sector working together. And that's now a major driver for the US economy. And so healthcare, medical services already is a major driver for Grenada's economy, just looking at SGU alone, but we can diversify concentrically around that. So the question then becomes, do you just want to create a hospital, or do we want to create an entire industry? So just give a very small example. Scotland, for example, people went to Scotland to study medicine. My father did that. Lots of people from the Caribbean around the world, etc. What they did in Scotland is that they've now expanded that. So they've taken an entire area. They've got a hospital. They have biotech. They've got pharmaceuticals. They've got medical manufacturing, all in one area, as well as providing excellent healthcare services through this hospital to their overall population. Mm-hmm. So in Grenada, there's an opportunity not just to have a hospital, but potentially to have a regional teaching hospital, and then to look at all of the related services that can go alongside that, including medical tourism. And so if you're of that view that these things can be important and can help in the transformation of the Grenadian economy, then you're not just thinking about, where do we put a hospital, but you're thinking of how do we position the hospital so that it can actually be the center of an entire industry, a medical industry that can make a major contribution to the transformation of Grenada. So I don't have particularly strong views on that. In the document, we showed a particular area above BBC. There's about 15 acres of flat land above there. You have to actually drive up above there to realize that. And we proposed that area because we thought if people are coming for medical tourism, they would want to have a view of the sea. And you don't want to have a set of, you want to be able to centralize some services. So you can have, world-class diagnostics that is available to Grenadians and is available to tourists coming from abroad, who, by the way, will pay more and help subsidize, healthcare, could help subsidize healthcare delivery. So you want to have some central services, and then you want to have services that can be accessed by Grenadians, and you have services that can be accessed by tourism. So that's a particular view. And ideally, if you're going to have medical tourism, then people want to be a little bit closer to the waterfront. So that then makes you think slightly differently about where you would actually put it. If we just want to do a hospital for Grenada, I think there are lots of different places where that could go. And I think it's possible to bring in consultants who could look at traffic flows and tell you where that should go. But I think the question here is not so much where does the hospital go, but what do we want to do? We've got SGU that's already a major part of Grenada's economy. It's the single largest source of medical doctors practicing in the United States. I mean, that's not an easy accolade to have. So how can we build on that and at the same time provide first-class medical services to the Grenadian people?
First-class medical services to Grenadian people, that has been the bane of our healthcare's existence, in many respects. So we definitely, Andros, is there anything, yes, you want to add quickly?
Let me just add a simple thing to Andros.
Yes.
The nursing school. We had a nursing school located on the General Hospital premises up to the days of deceased Laureate Clarkson. Mm-hmm. I now understand that the nursing program is subsumed within the National College program, and there probably is something going on with SGU as well. But I have had to require medical services in Trinidad over the last couple of years. And I was astounded to find out that Trinidad was importing nurses from Indonesia, India, and Cuba. Importing nurses who had a bare command of the English language. In other words, Dr. Friday spoke about exporting doctors. We seem to have missed an opportunity to export nurses. And it is tragic and ironic because of the contribution that Grenadians and West Indians have made to the NIS in the United Kingdom to the medical services in the United States and Canada. And we seem to have completely forgotten that we have put our nurses in a program now in TAM-CC and in SGU that they can ill afford. Not only can they ill afford it, but the question of attachments, practical attachments to the hospital appears to be no longer there. So the question of revisiting this, and I am talking about easily 50 to 100 nurses graduating. I think it is a 2 or 3 year program. 50 to 100 of them graduating every year, being abroad and repatriating monies to us. Do you know how many nationals we have working on cruise ships around the world? Who are spending 6 months out there and then coming home for 6 months, and who are remitting monies home every month to their families, not remitting barrels, remitting monies. We just don't seem to understand these simple things.
Very common sense approach. And let me bring back the, Minister Williams. Of course, Minister Williams, I want to respect your time. I want to respect the panelists' time, and I want to respect our final guest time here. So we're quickly going to get to Sess. I call him Sess. We are both PBC old boys. But Minister Williams, you've been hearing this conversation, and so we want to put a bow on everything that we were talking about today. A lot of what Mr. Phillips said here, a lot of what Dr. Friday said here, a lot of what Jimmy said here, it comes down to really a lack of political will for implementation. Also, fissures in the system in respect of enforcing best practices. The laws are on the books, but it's not enforced. You know, we might have all of these grand plans, but how is it systematically and properly implemented so as to achieve those objectives? And this is where your administration comes in. I know that you are the minister responsible for MIT, but of course, do you feel as if you are coming up with, or at least you're experiencing some of the challenges that these esteemed panelists have been talking about? And how do you hope to solve that?
So let me just say before I start, exactly what Mr. Philip was talking about just a while ago, about the nurses and the nursing school and so. To me, he read my mind. It's something that I was saying for a long time, even before politics, that the fact that people are demanding our nurses or our nurses are in demand is not a bad thing, right? It's a case where we should have really acted on that and try to export nurses that will in turn send back monies and so to contribute to our economy. So it's something that on a personal level I really agree with him on. Let me just say this first and foremost. Now the problem, and I will say it again in a general sense, is that we have a problem with implementation, and that is why our Prime Minister really introduced this ministry. We will have the best plans. I just saw all the plans for the blue economy. We will have the best plans. We will talk the talk, right? But when it's time to implement, it's like we just drop the ball. I heard Mr. Ambrose also talk about the Fort George. Imagine we had a project on the books, a World Bank project, since August 2017 to really turn Fort George into a tourism site. And that project only started implementation last year, September, October. And when we had meetings with other government officials from the other side who were there before, were they being involved, they said, Andy, listen, this project can never get going. But we made it our duty to get that project going. It got started.
Did they say why? Did they articulate what those roadblocks were?
Yeah, they said that.
And what are those roadblocks?
Number one, the main roadblock he was talking about was the tower. But immediately when I saw all the plans, listen, I brought everyone together: Flow, JSL, NTRC, tourism, RGPF, everyone in a room. And I said, listen, let's brainstorm this, because we must start this project. And one of the biggest roadblock was the tower. But again, we did not have to move the tower anytime soon. You could have started the project without moving the tower. The issue of the tower could have been dealt with later down. And the World Bank gave us some funding for the project, not all the funding, but some funding for the project. And we could have used up all the funding before moving the tower. Let's go again. I mean, I heard people talking about the UK SIF project. That's where you had a water expansion project, and you had works being done on the Western Main Road. And we got a grant since 2016. And I heard an individual talking about, listen, about COVID, and we are blaming everything on COVID, but in 2016, you had no COVID. You had 2016, you had 17, 18, 19, and COVID came in 20.
But Minister, you also, wait, hold on. You also said in Parliament last week that a lot of things were not done because of COVID. So you did the same thing too in Parliament.
Yes, but I'm saying we cannot blame everything on COVID. Let's look at the facts. If you have a project that was earmarked or should have started in 2016, you cannot now come in 2023 and said we did not do it because of COVID. You had 4 years before COVID to start a project. Right? And listen, we lost the grant funding, and I want everyone to hear this. We lost the grant funding because of lack of implementation since 2016 to now. What we did, we met with the CDB. We also met with the individuals from the UK, and we tried to save it. But because the UK were experiencing some depression and so, or it was looking that way, they made a decision to stop most of the grant funding if they did not commit it as yet. And because they did not commit it as yet, they stopped it. But this was free money we were getting to improve the water services throughout the whole south of the island. This was money we were getting, free money to improve the road network, on the western side. And we lost it because of lack of implementation. And this is what my ministry is here to do. We are here to work with all ministries to ensure we have the implementation process is done, in a quality manner, right? And this is what it is. So I'm hearing about all these plans. And what we are doing right now, we are in talks right now. We are discussing some of these things, so I don't want to talk about it. But when we make a decision, this ministry is a ministry that will run with it with other ministries to ensure that that the plans are implemented, right? So I just want to say and to tell, hold on, let me just address one more thing, right? Because I'm hearing the narrative that, let's just go back to the Kirani James Boulevard a bit. You had the Ministry of Infrastructure putting up over 60,000 EC dollars to assist with that cleanup. We had the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Ministry of Health. We had the Ministry of Infrastructure through Grenada solid waste coming again and having all equipment to move some of the boats and so. We had the guys giving their time. And when I'm hearing individuals trying to put a twist on it and say, oh, it's a private company that is doing all of this is completely false. And listen, I will say this because I have nothing to hide. Yes, we have companies who assisted in the process. But because they assisted in the process, it didn't mean that they were the one that actually did it. And that is where private and public partnership comes in. And that is what we should be promoting, because when we all come together to build this country, we will tend to have more pride. And we are seeing a Grenada where anything goes. And we have to get back to our stage where we put more structure in place, because we want people to, as they say, to earn something. We want them to earn, because at the end of the day, if you try to earn, you are putting less strain on the social services of the country. But it cannot be at the expense of our people or of our health. It cannot be. We want you to earn, but we have to do it in a structured manner. That will make more sense. And this is what it's all about. So I want to debunk some of because there are some people who, let me just make this point, it's a very important point. And I'm saying this.
Yes, quickly, we have to get to some closing comments.
This is very important. This is very important. Yes. Because there seems to be something in the atmosphere. And some people try their best to really, to bring a narrative that everything is politics. And I'm saying something, we have to drop the politics and think about our country. And everything you try to do, there's people that try to put a spin to try and fool our Grenadian people. And I'm saying we have to stop this thing. The election is over. It is time to build Grenada. We all have to come in and collectively contribute towards the building of this country. Because in the next 10, 15, 20 years, what we do now will determine the Grenada that we will see in the future. So I want to tell all those political people who try to just put a spin to this, stop it. The energy that you're putting into the negativity and so in all these things, stop it. And put some positive energy in building our country. And Linda, and Kelon, sorry. I just want to say this point because we have to stop and let's build Grenada. It belongs to us.
I see your passion. I see your passion. I'll get back to you for some closing comments, but I have to get to Angus and Ambrose for closing comments. So we're going to do this. Look, we have all the A's here. And Ambrose, Angus, Andy. Look at that. It's a trifecta. It's a trifecta of passion. Angus, I will go to you for some closing comments, and I'll go to Ambrose and then back to the minister.
Look, thanks for having me on the show, and I just want to, really appreciate all the comments made by fellow panelists. I also want to say a particular thanks and congratulations to the Honourable Minister for the work that that he's doing, because it's just great to see people taking on things which, frankly, needed to be tackled. It doesn't matter whose idea it was, where it started. The point is, I think we've heard this from the other panelists. There are lots of good ideas out there. The thing is, do we have the agency? Are we serious enough to implement? So it's great to see things being implemented. And I fully agree. In Grenada, we've got, we're a small country. We've got to use all the resources we have, which includes the human resources. And so, I'm all for people coming together to build Grenada. And when people put forward plans, Grenadians put forward plans, other people, let's take a look at it and see what we can do. We've got a great opportunity in Grenada, I think, to build a strong country. We have, there's so much potential and already so many things that are happening which can be built upon. So, I'm very encouraged, I think, to see the work that's already underway. And, whatever we could do, I think, to bring more people, I think, into the conversation, but also into implementation. And the whole point about bringing private sector in to help with, getting things done, that's also, that's also critical. I do need to run, but
yes, I absolutely, and I thank you for agreeing to appear on the program. Your expertise was most welcome. Ambrose, over to you for some closing comments for this segment.
First of all, thank you, Kelon, for inviting me to this particular program.
Yes.
The question of Grenada still remains where my navel string is buried.
That's right. And you are a consummate patriot, and I want to give you public credit, Mr. Philip, for being so balanced and being so erudite in your analysis of issues of development. And that is something I really, really appreciate as a researcher and as a Grenadian patriot myself. But I just wanted to say that.
You do embarrass me, but thank you. Let me give some congrats to the minister for his initiatives. And also to commend him and his team. I think that there are a couple of things in their favor. There's certainly enthusiasm, there is youth. But I think that they also have to use these qualities to build and strengthen our institutions, because things only remain sustainable when we create the institutional infrastructure to keep things like that. Other than that, if you're out of office tomorrow, all your efforts will be down the drain, and we need to go beyond that. And then I think that there should be an appeal to the broad-minded Grenadian nationals out there, that we have to be more collectively centered than individually centered. In other words, it is a cry for what can you do for Grenada in a genuine way. Thank you.
Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Yes, Ambrose? I'm sure that would be absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, Minister Williams, before I get to some closing comments, there is a contemporary issue that we have to address. You're not going to come on the Bubb Report and expect not to address those. But give us the leader of the opposition, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. Surrogates of the New National Party have expressed concern about a loan that you received from the Grenada Development Bank. They're saying that it is a glaring conflict of interest that you should be receiving a loan from a state-owned entity, a loan that loans that are usually disbursed for development purposes. What is the reality there where that's concerned? Now, the New Today, who I believe was the first newspaper publication in Grenada to address this. No other media entity has really addressed this, and now we're going to address this on the Bubb Report. In the New Today report, it says that according to you, they're quoting you, they said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here, Minister?
So let me just say this, Kelon. Now, I have been a customer of the bank for about 5-6 years. If you remember in 2017, I had a fire where everything got destroyed, right? And it was the Grenada Development Bank that assisted me somewhat in that way. So I've been a customer of the bank for 5-6 years now. And, yes, I approached them before the elections and so, and it's all had to do with business, right? And, and listen, let me just say this, that I'm someone who believes that the truth will come out. And when people try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it, I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Mr. Williams. Go ahead. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right? No, the only thing that was a gentleman once, he picked up the phone, and in a casual conversation, he asked me a question, and I answered him, and he took that and he put it out, and that's what
Mr. Worm.
That was the only case where
go ahead.
Go ahead, ask him the question. Just all right. So, and that was the only statement that was made from my part, not giving that person the permission to send it out, but they went ahead and sent it out, right? So that's it on the whole case with the Grenada Development Bank. And let me just say this, that when Hotspot had the fire, before the fire, everyone, were running to say, Andy, how can we assist you? And when we had the fire, and Hotspot was a business, let me just say something, right? Hotspot was a business that really actually was aimed to, not, the first aim wasn't to make a profit, right? It was, they call it the poor people place. And up to today, some people have some misconception about Hotspot, and they don't understand how Andy could have done it. And it was just through simple economics. We're using like loss leaders. Plus, I would import my own items from Trinidad. So, and before Hotspot, I used to sell to Under Supermarket and so, where I would sell to them and they would put up a markup and sell to you. And the idea came about, listen, if I could import these items and sell it straight to you, I would be cutting out the middleman and give you a better price. And that was the whole thing about Hotspot. And today, even people right now say, Andy, listen, we miss Hotspot because we miss the deals and so, And I said, but in terms of GDP, I was a customer, how much, 5-6 years now? And that's the case. So, and listen, for me, I've seen politics played with these things. And somewhat, they tend to try to use that to distract me. But I have this to say. And I said it in a campaign, that I will not be distracted. One of my best qualities is being focused when people have the most to say. Because there is a bigger picture here, Kelon. Grenada is the bigger picture. And I'm devoted. I work Sunday to Sunday to ensure that I put whatever effort I can put in today to help this country move forward. As we are on this program right now, I have some guys cleaning on Wall Street. Imagine we have the drain in front of Gittin Pharmacy and so. which was not clean for the last probably 10, 15 years, right? And when the rainfall, the whole place started to flood. We have the lagoon, sorry, the area in Montrouge, where when rain falls again, the whole place started to flood again. So we are on this program right here now, but I have guys who are right now working on that to ensure that the environment is left in a better, place, not place, but in a better way. But, and that's it. So I've seen politics being played with this, but I have nothing to say. My thing is just being focused.
All right. So you're saying you are disputing some of the claims that are made in respect of how much you got. You're also disputing the timing of the loan. You're saying here that that loan was approved before as a result of an incident that happened in your business. You've been a customer at the bank. I just want to make sure I lay those facts down, because we will be following up with the Grenada Development Bank. And quite frankly, Mr. Williams, I would say this in all of the conversation around this, and this goes for my friends in the media. How many of us actually approach the bank to get the truth on this? But that has nothing to do with you. That's a process-oriented journalism that we also need to follow. But Minister, I want to give you an opportunity for some closing comments. Again, thank you for agreeing to appear on the program. You should have been here last week, but the program had a sudden cancellation. But any closing comments before we get to the final segment of the program, sir?
Yes, and I want to say that, as to really continue from the point I was making before, that I'm seeing a lot of political fire in the air right now. And I'm saying we have to be careful. Listen, I voted for NNP all my years. And I have nothing against NNP, right? I have nothing against NNP. As a matter of fact, I voted for NNP because I liked Dr. Mitchell, But
Dr. Modeste, don't forget Dr. Modeste. That's also your good friend.
And politics will not get into myself and Dr. Modeste. She's my friend. But that's the person I am. I do not make politics get between me and anyone, because everyone have a right to vote for who they want to vote for. It is your right. And no one cannot, take that right away from you. As a matter of fact, people died for us to be in that position today. Right? So that's your fundamental right. But when I'm seeing people trying to put one against the other because they support a party, I'm saying we have to stop that. Let's put the same energy in building this country. And that is what I would love to see. Kelly, let me tell you, I'm the MP for the South, right? And when people come to me, I don't care which party you support. You are a Grenadian. You pay taxes, right? The government is supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So it is our duty to serve the people, right? And for me, this is what I will continue to bring to the table. Right? When I spend 4 or 5 years in office, I want to ensure that when I leave, I can see what I did to improve Grenada in any way possible. This is what it should be. I should be able to say, listen, I have helped people, right? I've assisted, I've contributed to Grenada, so that when we go down to the grave, we can be satisfied that we have done our duty. This is what it is supposed to be about. Not the fighting and the bickering, because why we are fighting and bickering? Other countries are passing us. As a matter of fact, back in the days in the 80s, Grenada was like the gem of the Bermuda Islands. We were leading. Where are we today? And this is where we have to get back to. And we can never reach that place by fighting with one another. The Bible said a kingdom divided cannot stand. So it is important for us to come together. Yes, let's engage in constructive criticism, because at the end of the day, it is for the betterment of our country, and that is what it should be about. But when we fight and we fight and we fight, we are not going forward. So I want to tell those people who are bent on dividing us, it is time to stop. And I want to tell our people, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's not get too caught up in the distractions, right? And let's do what we can do in order to build Grenada so it can be a better place for our children and their children. This is what will stand the test of times.
But Minister, you're calling, yes, and thank you for that. And I just have to do this follow-up. You're calling for a lowering of the temperature. You're calling for us to engage in constructive criticism without being disagreeable. But supporters of your political organization engage in some of the most toxic communication on social media as well. It would appear as if you cannot constructively critique this administration without being the victims of personal insults. They have gone after myself. They have gone after Calistro Faria. They're just insulting people, creating memes. If you're going to call for a lowering of the political temperature, I think it is fair, Minister, for us to do that across the board.
Now, if you notice, remember, you're the one that's saying that I'm not doing it across the board. When I'm speaking across the board. Okay. I'm saying that we have to stop this. The campaign is over. Election is over. Let's build our country. So I'm speaking across the board, and listen, everyone that comes to me, I try my best to assist. It doesn't matter if it's from they are not in my constituency, it doesn't matter. I will try my best to assist any and everyone. I try to make myself accessible as possible. Even so accessible that sometimes people say, Andy, I'm trying to get you and I can't get you. Right? I'm on the ground Sunday to Sunday. Because I was once on the outside. And I've seen it all. I've seen it. So coming inside, I said to myself, listen, Andy, you have to make a difference. You have to try, right? And in order to try, you have to be different. So the victimization and all these things, I don't engage in that. I don't promote these things. We have to reach a stage where people can contribute based on their merit. And I'm saying we have to stop this bickering back and forth and in CNMP and trying to kill one another. And so that is not taking us anywhere. What will take us somewhere is when we come together and try to be our brother's keeper. When we try to help our brothers and sisters. When we try to contribute to our community. That is what will help. So for me, Kellon, right? This is what I think we should be doing. And I'm saying, guys, let us be focused. Let us stop being distracted with all the pettiness and so. This is not what will take Grenada forward. We have to come on a we have to be or take a collective approach with love and unity to move this country forward. In the next 4 years, we will campaign again. But for now, let's drop it. Let's come together. Let's build this country. And if you want to build it, I'm open. You can contact me anytime and join the movement.
Well, Minister, perhaps you can start by inviting the leader of the opposition to lunch and invite some of your very active supporters on both sides to lunch.
So let me break down the hypocrisy, right? When you see we are in Parliament and we have a break, our Parliament is finished, and you go in the lunchroom, everyone is laughing and chatting with each other, right? You have Kate and Tevin and Kayuku give one another talking nice. You have me sitting on a table with Dr. Modest. You have Peter and Toes, and Lennox Andrews chatting, love, unity, just name it. But there's a tendency to feel like once we're outside, we have to fight because we have to please our supporters. But this happens, Kellon. We get along well. And I'm saying this is part of the hypocrisy because there's a feeling that in order to keep our supporters up tempo and motivated, we have to look like if we are fighting. That needs to stop. So
well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you're calling for a lowering of the temperature. That's extremely important. We can have these conversations as we did here on the Bubb Report this morning. There were no hurling of personal insults. I believe I treated you firmly but fairly, as I do with all guests on this program. I take the ethics of my journalism very seriously. So on that note, Mr. Williams, I want to thank you because I know it's lunchtime and I want to give you an opportunity to have your lunch. But thank you for appearing on the program, sir.
Okay, it's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me on this program. And I just want to wish everyone a happy Sunday. Be safe, and listen, we are cleaning up on the Wall Street. If you want to join us, you can still come down and join us. We will welcome your help. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter political affiliation. We are doing this for country.
So we're making a maroon down on Wall Street. I like that.
Yes, listen.
Right, okay.
And if you come, I'm buying lunch for you. I'm getting you drinks, everything, because this is what we know. This is what we want to bring back: the community spirit in our country.
All right, Honorable Andy Williams, thank you so much. We quickly have to get to the final segment. Thank you, sir, for appearing on. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to the program. We are going to quickly get to the final segment of the Bubb Report today. I am joined by the newly minted CEO of the Grenada Spice Mass Corporation, Cecil Noel. Thank you for being flexible and thank you for agreeing to appear on the program on such short notice. I do know that you had some personal obligations that you have to attend to, so I really thank you for taking the time to spend a few moments with us today.
Good afternoon, Kelon, and thanks for the invitation as well. I'm really happy that I can make it.
Yes.
So we can share some time together.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And of course, we both have the honorable distinction of being past students of the Presentation College. They call me a show-off when I do that, but I'm very patriotic.
I tell you what, GBSS may not be too happy to hear you say that because that's where I spend most of my time, but I do share a lot of it between both the schools, especially with my son being a PBC boy. Yes.
Absolutely. So you're part of the PBC family.
I am.
So let us talk about this week. It's a very, very busy week for you. We had the media launch of first Carnival 2023, and then we had the Spice Mass launch. Let us talk about the launch. How did it go, and what reviews have you been getting from the launch?
The launch went very well, Kelon, and the reviews that we have received are really upbeat, really to the point where we feel that what we're doing is the right thing. And that is what we want. We have had such positive reviews that it just seemed to have motivated us and, setting the stage for what's to come down the road. The attendance, for example, was I would consider it really phenomenal. I would think it's approximately 3,000, maybe 3.5. Some other people told me it's more than that, but I prefer to go on the conservative side. And in addition to that, one of the things I'm really pleased about is the fact that on the onset, we decided that we want to showcase traditional mass and we want to make that one of the biggies, if I may say it so, for 2023 and beyond. And I was extremely happy that we were able to get quite a number of the various traditional mass band to come out, including that of the Sailor Band. So that in itself, really set the tone in terms of when we spoke of our team, the evolution, and what we want to do. I think it really set the tone nicely and give us that impetus to really move forward.
When we talk about evolution, what is your vision? What are we trying to evolve into? I'm just trying to get specifics around that, because some may argue that Grenada's Carnival is evolving, especially the traditional aspect of Carnival, is evolving into a sort of cookie cutter. All costumes are looking the same. Feathers, I love feathers as well. I play mass. I'm a fancy mass player. But it appears that it's, some may say that it's evolving into that. So what evolution are you hoping to see in respect of the product that makes us stand out from other Carnival products in the Caribbean?
Well, great. Excellent question, Kelon. And I would answer by saying, first and foremost, coming on board as CEO, one of the main things that I set out to do is to work towards policies and procedures so we can, in fact, see an evolution. We can see some meaningful change to what we do for Carnival. And let me expound on that a bit. If, for example, I am to come into Spice Mass as someone who just wants to put on the event Spice Mass, make sure the launch is done, make sure the other shows are done. Quite honestly, I think that I would have accepted that role at a disservice to the people of Grenada. And even from one of the presenters before, Mr. Ambrose Phillip, he actually made a point that we need to set institutions, we need to set things in place so that the people to follow us will in fact see the vision we have, see how good it is, and be able to work towards making sure that what we do in terms of the evolution, it's sustained and not turned back. So really and truly, a lot of emphasis is going to be placed and is being placed on that of policies and procedure. I would hasten to add that I don't want people to have the exceedingly high expectation that some of what we are working on that are all going to come to fruition in 2023, because that is not true. It will not happen. But I definitely hope that with time, by 2024, we should be seeing some significant changes to the way Spice Mass is being rolled out, the way Spice Mass is being marketed as a product, because it's extremely important for us to do that. As I said before, just putting on an event, Spice Mass is a lot more than that. It's easy, I will think, to come and make sure that Monday Night Mass happen. Not much really required to do that, or for any other events. But we want to make sure that we set some really solid foundation and platform on which going forward we can see the product Spice Mass being much better. Some of those I in fact outlined at the media launch. And when we look at the product, I think it's really significant that one of the things we ought to spend some time doing is what happened on the street. And when I say on the street, the whole question of how the bars, the mass bands or the masqueraders move on the street. So things like some policy and some level of control with time, some quality and control with respect to how do we make sure that everyone gets a fair share, including those of the spectators. So those are some of the things that.
But even the masqueraders, because last year, the bands, I mean, I played mass last year and I was disappointed by just the late start. First of all, I was disappointed that Jab Jabs was still in town after 11, 12 o'clock. I remember pageant back in the day and the Jab Jabs were out of town by 9, 10 o'clock, they were gone. And as a masquerader, I, one of the things I miss is going across the carnage and having that sun hit you, having that sun hit the costume. That experience is gone. But a lot of masqueraders felt cheated. The fancy masqueraders felt cheated that the parade just started late and there was nobody enforcing anything. Yes, but go ahead.
And that's a problem, because I'm hearing you, but I'm also thinking even us, when I say us, in terms of the masqueraders and leaders of band, I mean, we need to send a very strong message to everyone that if we really want this product Spice Mass to really go forward and to be seen as different from those of other carnival-like events, that there are certain things we must put in place. So the whole question of obedience to time. So, for example, we know we start on Juve, let's say, for what's going on the streets. And our plan is to encourage everyone to really come out early, like 4 o'clock, and get themselves ready so we can have an early start to Juve. And as I stated at the media launch, the plan is that by 9:30, Juve should be completed. People should be making their way home so that the streets can be clean, the streets can be sand to avoid people slipping from the jab playing their part of it, and have it all prepared for what is to follow next. The pageant, although I was corrected and told pageant is only when there is really competition. But nonetheless, even if I use the term loosely, I will do that so people understand. And even after the pageant, we still have the Monday Night Mass. Now, the only way these are going to fall and in sync and really be showcased in a proper way is if we, all of us, play our part. As organizers, as spectators, and as participants, we need to be able to do that. And if we can do that, that in itself, in a big way, will eliminate a lot of the problem. And people would feel more justified that what we're doing, it's worthy of praise. Now, that's just part of the whole initiative to deal with time. But there are other elements that we also need to look at. Part of what we also realizing is that with us very small space, more and more the place seems to get congested. But we ought to remember that the area used for Carnival is primarily a small area, and it's not quite a ring road. And that in itself caused the whole question of how the bands flow to be a little bit of a problem in terms of how the masquerader ought to involve themselves and enjoy themselves, as well as the whole question of the spectators. So we really hoping that with the help of everyone, we can make the street a fantastic, what I would like to call, make it a street theater where people can really see what's going on and see it in an organized way.
And that's what the carnage enabled, until.
Yes, but the carnage could only enable that if, for example, we do not have as many of the 40 feet trailer trucks.
Yeah.
You see, so there's a lot. And I'm saying this, and I don't want anybody to feel in any way that what we're doing is trying to impact them negatively. On the other hand, we trying to make sure it's really positive, because it does affect how things flow and how things happen. And if we could get people to understand better what's going on, it will really significantly improve the product and make it something that everyone can better enjoy. As I said, I'm not telling people to expect all of this to happen in 2023, but it is our desire, a very strong will and desire, to put things in place to make sure a lot of these elements do come true, even with respect to finances. As you may very well appreciate, Kelon, putting on Spice Mass is a very expensive effort. And yes, when Spice Mass as an event is being held, a lot of funds, a lot of money comes into Grenada. But the reality is Spice Mass as a corporation, as an entity, does not enjoy the benefits of receiving those money straight into their coffers. And in that regard, we know, and we have done some work that indicates where a lot of these money that come in go. And all we are simply asking is, for example, for corporate Grenada to get on board and assist us more in terms of sponsorship. Because in my opinion, I think it's a very fair ask. And if I should put it even a more blunt manner, the more these people put in back into Carnival, the truth is that the more they're likely to make. Because the spin-off from the event Spice Mass does in fact, in a big way, get into their business, their organization. So it's a lot of different things and lots of synergies we're looking at to make sure that it does work and does come true in a manner that is beneficial to all.
Absolutely. Two final questions, and I would go and make sure that you get your lunch. I have not eaten a full breakfast yet.
Yes.
He's watching me over there. But talk about the diaspora launch in New York. I know that many Grenadians in New York would be happy about this. Venue, time, is there a price of admission? What does that look like?
Okay, well, we are extremely happy to take the launch outside of Grenada. And it is our way of saying to the people in the diaspora that, hey, you are part of Grenada in a big way, even when you're outside of Grenada. So we are doing the launch that's next Sunday, the 7th of May, and it's going to be at the Elegant Crown Hill Theatre. If I remember the address correctly, I think it's 740 North Strand Avenue. That's between Park and Sterling. So we are really inviting people to come out. The price for admission is $40. Well, I'm encouraging you to get your tickets in advance. You could even get them online on GoToFet, because on the day itself, it's going to be $50 instead. It starts at 5 p.m. and goes up to 11 p.m. And what is really interesting again about this is that similar to what we did here in Grenada, we are making sure that what we do here in a similar way, it is spread outwards. So traditional mass is also going to be another key feature there. And we hope to have element of all the aspects of Carnival, probably with the exception in this case of a really big band, let's say, coming out of Grenada, but we hope to have some representation there. So we'll have the traditional mass, we'll have the fancy mass, we'll have the soca, calypso artists, and they will all be there. So it's going to be a matter of taking Grenada, if you want to call it this way, and bring it to New York, to the Elegant Crown Hill on Sunday the 7th. So we are inviting and expecting everyone to come out. And I must take this opportunity to say a big thank you to the organizing committee in New York for taking on the mantle to work along with us to ensure that we have the launch. And I'm almost certain that it will be a resounding success, similar to what we saw here in Grenada on Friday evening.
Absolutely. And finally, Mr. Noel, there was a bit of a curiosity in your comments at the press conference. I believe I was talking offline, full disclosure, with my colleague Kalistra about it. You mentioned something about carnival and morality. I'm not too sure where you were going with that. I mean, carnival, let's be real, carnival is not a time when people think about morality when they have alcohol in their system or winding down low on the carnage. I certainly don't think about moral compass when I'm whining in carnival. But what were you trying to say there, Mr. Noel?
But I'll be very honest with you. Even if it's something that you say people may not consider, the message I'm sending is that I think people should consider it. Because as I stated, there is really life. And if you look at life in a very broad sense, life after Carnival, there's a lot of different things that we really should be considering. And I don't want it to just look at it in any one way. The one number, for example, of points I highlighted. The whole question of making sure, for example, what we do with our finances. Yes, we can't tell people what to do with it, but we could encourage them in terms of how they make use of it to make sure that they, the family, and the other people who depend on them do not, quote unquote, go in a way that they feel deprived of because of what happened. And we know that these events are going to happen. We know people sometimes we want to spend the money in a particular way, and it's their choice. But all we do is asking them to remember the things that need to be considered. For example, it's going to be August. School is going to be September. People need to think and consider those things. So when I spoke about all of those, I make reference.
So I think you were echoing the Black Wizard. When the carnival over? Yes,
of course it is. And I mean, the truth, Kellon, I think even like Andy said, sometimes people have problems when you come out and say it as it is in a very genuine way. But that's just what it is. It's a similar way. I mean, you make mention of the drinking and you enjoy yourself. But at the same time, as I also echoed in my presentation, what about the accidents that will occur because somebody may have been irresponsible in terms of the alcohol consumption and then get on the road to drive? So I think it is really our moral obligation as Spice Mass to not just tell people to come and enjoy themselves, but to let them know that there are other very important aspects that must be considered. And I emphasize, must be considered, not just for us, but for them, for their family, and those who depend on them. And we can go on.
Absolutely. Yes, you did. You did. Sess, thank you so much. I call you Sess.
I know that's okay. That's how we are, Kellon. And I tell you what, I'm sure, I mean, I will be happy and delighted to be back on because part of what...
No, absolutely. I am an avid, not only a carnival reveler, but I'm an avid fan of carnival. Carnival is a part of my identity. I play mass and I make no apologies for that. I celebrate, even at my institution, I'm actually trying to have a carnival themed event for West Indian American Heritage Month in June. So it's there. It's a passion I have. So definitely we want to have you back. We want to have SMC representatives back. But go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm so glad you make mention of it because there's no we can talk about Spice Mass if we don't mention the word heritage. It is something we want to do. We have people who have extremely creative minds. And all what we want to do is to make sure that those creative minds, those creative juices are correctly fostered and brought into our carnival. So we need to make sure that in a holistic way, that when we talk about Spice Mass, people of all culture, all background, if I may even take the risk to say it, even of a religious perspective, there should be something because of our culture and heritage that they can see as being of an important part of Spice Mass. So it is extremely important that we all get on board and play our part to make it the best it can be. And when I say the best, I'm not just talking here from a fetish standpoint, but as a product, something that we as Grenadian can all be uniquely proud of.
Well, perhaps you can consult Father Gerard Paul. You mentioned religion and carnival because Father Gerard Paul played mass a few years ago. And maybe that's why he references soca in a lot of his sermons. He mentioned Patrice Roberts the other day. Drink water and mind your business. Amen. But I digress. Cecil, any final comments, sir, before we close the program today?
Well, just to invite everyone, I mean, including those in the diaspora here, we're going to have Spice Mass again, 2023, and we're encouraging everyone to be a part of it in whatever way possible. Now, there's a lot of different things that can be done to harness and to make it better. Your participation can be one, the financial contribution could be another, and the list goes on. We just want to make sure that we all play our part to, in some way, to contribute to making it a grand success, as we say, to really cause it to evolve for 2023 going forward.
Spice Mass 2023, the evolution. Cecil Noel, the newly minted CEO of the Grenada Spice Mass Corporation, you certainly have your hands full and it's a very busy period for you. So I certainly thank you for taking the time. We on the Bubb Report will continue with our Carnival programming. We're not going to talk about Carnival only during the season. It's now a year-round initiative. So thank you again, Cec, for appearing on the program.
Thank you, Kellan. Take care.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, thank you so much for all of you for staying with us today. I thought that today's program was extremely educational, extremely informative, extremely enlightening. And I want to thank all of our guests, our previous guests, for staying with us and being so patient through these very important and rigorous discussions. And of course, to you, viewers and listeners, for your comments, some of which we could not get to. But again, as always, we thank you for your continued participation in the Bubb Report by way of your comments. Keep those comments coming. Keep the participation coming. For those of you who did not share the program, please do so that other folks can partake of the rich knowledge that was shared here today. On behalf of the hardworking producers of the Bubb Report, I am your humble servant, Dr. Kellan Bubb, thanking you again for tuning in to this week's episode. And we will see you next week for another installment of the Bubb Report. Again, happy International Workers' Day to all of the workers in Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique, and throughout the international community. Solidarity forever. Long live. Bye-bye.